The 13th year of dad pretending to be poor, mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. To raise money for her treatment, I sold myself for 300,000 yuan. When going to process the hospitalization, the money in the card had mysteriously vanished. I was breaking down and calling the police when dad snatched my phone away. Yao Yao, dad confiscated your money. But even if you're broke, you can't sell yourself short. If you inherit the family business and hit a rough patch someday, you'd probably auction off our entire legacy. I'm deeply disappointed in you. You've failed the test. From today onward, I, Harold, disown you as my daughter. With that, dad drove off in his luxury car without looking back. Rage choked me till I coughed blood. The experimental drugs had ravaged my body beyond repair, leaving me collapsed on the floor awaiting death. When my eyes opened again, I was back in elementary school. This time when I came to, mom was calling dad to dinner. The table groaned with dishes, yet dad sat stiffly, his furrowed brow betraying his inability to swallow a bite. Mom had no idea that dad was already worth millions back then, living so lavishly that he'd grown tired of gourmet delicacies. Yet at home, he claimed to be just a janitor who moonlighted shining shoes for extra cash. His monthly salary couldn't cover basic expenses, and with grandma's worsening condition, he sank tens of thousands deeper into debt each month. Growing up, I never cost him more than pocket change, from diapers and formula as a baby to school supplies and clothes growing up. The answer was always the same: broke. Any request would be met with tales of hardship. His mother understood, never asked him for help, and often worked 3 jobs just to ease his burden. And now you're telling me to listen to dad. Your father works hard too, even though he doesn't earn much. His willingness to keep working is admirable. Many people in his situation would have given up completely, let alone support their elderly mother. Oh, my love-blind mom. I didn't argue, just nodded silently. I immediately wrote about my dad in my composition titled, My Janitor Father. I wrote that being a janitor is noble work, though many consider it insignificant. This job genuinely transforms our living environment, bringing us cleanliness and comfort. My father is also extraordinary, while his salary may seem meager to some. This work fulfills his self-worth and makes him part of society's backbone. My homeroom teacher was utterly amazed, praising my writing skills as surpassing 99% of elementary students. Then I submitted my work to the city competition. Unsurprisingly, it won first prize and got featured in a magazine. My homeroom teacher was thrilled and insisted on interviewing my dad at the parent-teacher conference. I asked my teacher, "Do you think my dad will be happy?" The homeroom teacher patted my head with a smile. "Of course. He'd be proud to have a daughter like you." Hearing this, I smiled contentedly. Doesn't dad love pretending to be a janitor? Then I'll make it known far and wide. Tell everyone he's a janitor. Elementary school material was child's play for me. The only thing on my mind was when I could dig into the lunchbox mom packed. I sprawled across the desk, doodling circles in my textbook while counting down to the final bell. My desk mate Tiffany was starving too. I caught her sneaking a chocolate from under the table like a ninja. The rich, sweet aroma of chocolate practically wafted toward me, irresistibly drawing my gaze. Noticing my attention, Tiffany smirked and arched an eyebrow triumphantly. Never tasted these before. Huh, my dad bought them for me. We've got loads at home. Want some? Get on your knees and lick my shoes, and maybe I'll share. I shook my head. That stuff tastes awful. I'd begged dad to buy me chocolate before, only to get scolded. Later when mom fell ill, I couldn't bring myself to spend the money. It wasn't until I earned money from drug trials that I finally caved and bought a bar. Even though my stomach was already in terrible shape, I intended to eat slowly, but ended up devouring it like a starving wolf. The silky, rich flavor was so addictive I nearly swallowed my own tongue. Within 3 seconds, I was vomiting violently and writhing in stomach pain. Just the thought of chocolate now sent spasms of pain through my gut. Tiffany rolled her eyes with a scoff. What a performance. That expression bore an uncanny resemblance to that woman. Just like Tiffany, that woman lived a pampered life, carrying designer handbags, with crimson nails and lips, her skin glowing with a porcelain sheen. As I lay dying on the hospital's frigid floor, my spirit hovered in midair. Tiffany and her mother beamed with joy as they stepped out of the beauty salon and slid into the back seat of the luxury car dad was driving. That's when it hit me. Tiffany's mother was dad's mistress all along. While mom and I scraped by on rice porridge and noodles, Tiffany and her mother were already sick of fancy Japanese, Korean, and French cuisine. When mom and I couldn't even afford hospital visits for injuries, Tiffany's dog was getting $700 spa treatments. While I was scrambling to make ends meet for living and medical expenses, Tiffany was busy ticking off her world travel bucket list. Too much, way beyond what words can describe. When the school bell finally rang, I carried my lunchbox to the garden, savoring every bite filled with motherly love. School's out in the afternoon. Mom was hustling alone in the kitchen, with all sorts of ingredients spread across the floor. Turns out Dad's investors were coming over for dinner. They specifically requested some home-style dishes. Naturally, Dad didn't want to waste money, so he just bought the ingredients and had Mom cook at home. These are all big shots. If they're pleased, even the crumbs from their table could make me rich. Dad kept drilling it into my head. Then he sent me back to my room to do homework and stay out of trouble. I nodded blankly and quietly worked on my homework in the room. Half an hour later, the aroma of cooking wafted from the kitchen. My stomach growled. Lunch had long been digested, and it was time for dinner, too. But after waiting for hours, Mom finally came in clutching 2 large steamed buns. You must be starving. Here, have one. I frowned and glanced outside where Dad and the investors were feasting heartily. Mom, I want some too. Mom sighed. Be good, honey, your father's handling important business. If this dinner goes well, maybe they'll invest in his project. Then he won't have to work so hard as a janitor anymore. I can't believe how naive my mom is. She either doesn't know the truth, or refuses to believe it. Even if my father did strike it rich, improving our lives would be the last thing on his mind. By then, Dad had already accumulated modest wealth. After this successful partnership, my father skyrocketed from an obscure small business owner to a corporate titan worth hundreds of millions. Yet he persistently played poor around Mom and me, endlessly exploiting us under the guise of character-building tests. In the end, neither Mom nor I got the slightest benefit from him. I took a bite of the steamed bun. The bun that usually tasted sweet now seemed bland and dry compared to the aroma of all the meat dishes. I put down the bun and rushed straight to the dining table, ignoring Mom's protests. Dad, I want some too. I raised my voice and shouted. Everyone froze and turned to look at me. Dad frowned and motioned me back inside. Stop making a scene, you'll get your share later. I refused to leave, instead licking my lips with undisguised longing, wiping my mouth theatrically. I announced in that sing-song voice school kids use for recitals. I can perform for you. I know ancient poems by heart. With that, I began swaying my head rhythmically. Spring river tides level with the sea, where moonbeams and waves rise endlessly. For miles the shimmering waters flow. What creek without moon's silver glow? I recited it all in one breath, then flashed an ingratiating smile while pointing at the ribs before me. Can I eat now? The investor seemed amused by me. Of course, you little foodie. Dad chuckled awkwardly too. Hurry up and thank Uncle Miles. I picked up a small bowl and took a few pieces, then suddenly burst into tears upon hearing this. Thank you, Uncle Miles. Thank you, Uncle Miles. If it weren't for you coming, Mom and I would never have gotten to eat such delicious meat. Everyone wore different expressions, the atmosphere unbearably awkward. Miles' expression darkened instantly. Can't you normally afford meat? Snapping out of his shock, Dad sharply shooed me away. Stop talking nonsense. Get back to your room this instant. But I refused. Clutching my little bowl, I sobbed uncontrollably. That's right, Uncle Miles. My family is dirt poor. Dad works as a janitor and even moonlights shining shoes, but he still can't make ends meet. Mom has to work 3 jobs just to pay off his debts, and I have to pinch every penny. At this point, I lowered my head, following my gaze. You'd see 2 holes in my socks perfectly framing my big toes. The group exchanged uneasy glances, especially Miles, who finally caught on after a long pause. Harold, you're not fucking trying to screw us over, are you? Didn't you make bank last time? Where'd it all go, gambling or bad investments? At these words, the other 2 immediately grew wary, flustered. Dad quickly forced a smile and tried to explain. No, the kid's just making things up. Making what up? Miles pointed at my socks. These didn't just tear yesterday. All this talk about the project sounds great, but let's put this collaboration on hold for now. We'll revisit it later. The group started getting up as they spoke. Dad kept trying anxiously to dissuade them. Kids can't even put on socks properly. Me, that's right, Uncle. I go through a pair of socks every year. Kids these days and their tall tales. I quickly added, Uncle, my essay about Dad even won an award, and I aced all my subjects last semester. They started packing up frantically, slamming the door behind them in seconds. Dad rushed out, nearly getting his nose smashed by the swinging door. Ignoring the pain, he stumbled after them, desperately trying to explain, but it was no use. Miles was convinced Dad was dead broke and trying to pawn them off as suckers, so he wasn't getting any warm reception. Half a year's hard work went down the drain in an instant. He came home with a face as dark as thunderclouds. He immediately lashed out at Mom. "Look what your precious daughter has done. She actually told everyone I'm a janitor." Mom looked genuinely puzzled. "But you are one," Dad choked up, as if suddenly realizing he'd arbitrarily labeled himself as the janitor. "And now he's the first to find fault with it." 3. Mom turned to look at me. I was already seated at the table, digging in with gusto. "Mom's cooking is absolutely divine. My digestive system is in great shape. I'm full of energy, and my appetite is fantastic." Mom was about to scold me for wolfing down my food when suddenly her eyes welled up with tears. "I think Nora actually makes a good point." Dad frowned and asked, "What did you say?" Mom took a deep breath. "I don't think Nora's wrong. She's only 11, just a child wanting decent food. What's so bad about that? Ever since marrying you, I've lived in constant fear and scarcity, running around just to make ends meet." "But Harold, how could you feast like a king while completely neglecting your own daughter?" Dad froze, his expression turning uneasy. "That's not fair. I'm building connections by treating them. Isn't that planning for our future? If I succeed, won't I be able to eat whatever I want later? Why stuff myself like a starving ghost now? Great, just because of her, I've offended my investors. Might as well enjoy this meal. It'll be the last decent one for a while." Mother frowned slightly, visibly torn, as if wavering. Dad turned with a furious glare and scolded me. "Your damn gluttony just cost me a fortune." I put down the giant chicken leg. My lips quivered as tears welled up. Sorry, Dad." I couldn't hold back a satisfied burp. I was just too hungry. "This is my fault. I couldn't control my stomach." "But Dad, I've got great news. I ranked first in my grade. Can you come to the parent-teacher meeting tomorrow? My teacher specifically asked for you. They're going to praise you in front of everyone." His father scowled and waved him off. "You've embarrassed me enough. I'm not going." He turned away and slumped on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Spotting something unknown, he suddenly called my name. "Nora, what time does the parent-teacher conference start?" When my father arrived at school, he didn't even glance at me, instead scanning the crowd intently. I thought he was looking for Tiffany and her mother, but he went straight to Miles with an ingratiating smile. "Boss, what a coincidence running into you again. I'm here for my daughter's parent-teacher conference." No one knew what they were discussing, but their conversation gradually warmed up the atmosphere between them. Even the usually frosty Miles began to thaw, a smile creeping onto his face. "Dad," Tiffany waved at my dad, nearly giving him a heart attack. My dad immediately zeroed in on Tiffany's mom. Sarah rushed over to whisper something urgently. Moments later, Sarah shot him a reproachful look before steering Tiffany away. After this whole scene, my dad glanced guiltily in my direction. Seeing me absorbed in my book, he exhaled in relief and casually strolled over. "Dad's here." "Where are you sitting?" "On the field." Our class seating remained arranged by classroom order. Miles' son from the neighboring class happened to be seated right next to us. I led my father to our seats, locking eyes with Sarah and her daughter. Tiffany was visibly fuming, her breath ragged and eyes blazing with anger. It seemed to dawn on her just then. The "dad" she'd been referring to was actually my father. Dad was visibly nervous too, constantly shooting Sarah meaningful glances. Tiffany stayed sulky the whole time, almost like she was throwing a deliberate tantrum. As for me, I pretended not to notice anything. The award ceremony began. Over 20 elementary students had participated in the municipal essay competition, but I was the only one who took first place. All others got third. After the customary opening remarks, the award ceremony commenced. My eyes lit up when I heard my name called. Dad was over the moon, telling Miles repeatedly, "My daughter won an award. She's actually quite the good student." The next moment, my homeroom teacher looked my way and announced, "Now, let's welcome our student Nora to read her winning essay." My janitor father. The smile my father had just mustered froze instantly on his lips, his face flushed crimson abruptly. Meanwhile, suppressing a scornful smirk, I bounded onto the stage to begin my essay recitation. My father Harold is an exemplary sanitation worker who toils from dawn till dusk, painstakingly cleaning our urban environment. Every speck of dust and scrap of paper on the ground is his sworn enemy. I'd never seen so many emotions flicker across my father's face before. His loud outburst made everyone turn their heads toward him. Whispered comments began circulating. A janitor. Doesn't look like one from the clothes. Why would someone so young become a janitor? Don't people usually take those street cleaning jobs only after retirement when they've got nothing better to do? I heard sanitation workers earn peanuts. How's he supposed to support a family on that? Dad's face flushed crimson, then turned ashen. Before darkening completely, Miles grew visibly more sullen with each word, until he finally couldn't take it anymore. I'm starting to doubt every word that comes out of your mouth. Let me make this crystal clear. Cooperation is off the table. With that, Miles immediately changed his seat. Dad could no longer hold back. He wanted to explain but feared disturbing others. Just as the homeroom teacher briskly led him toward the podium, cameras and microphones immediately swiveled toward him. Under the blazing spotlight, questions came rapid fire. Your daughter's so responsible. Ever thought about switching jobs to earn more and improve your living situation? What's the current pay scale for sanitation workers? How did you feel when you heard your daughter's essay? Beads of cold sweat formed on Dad's forehead as he saw the murmuring crowd. His mind went blank, stammering to find words. Then it suddenly dawned on another reporter. Could Harold's choice to become a janitor in his prime be due to his stutter? Oh my, Mr. Harold is truly an inspiration despite his disability. No wonder his daughter is so outstanding. The homeroom teacher, also moved by this revelation, grasped my father's hand earnestly. Mr. Harold, I have an idea that might help you. You see, all our faculty wear leather shoes as uniform. From now on, you could be responsible for polishing them. This would provide you with steady additional income. Someone in the audience looked up and voiced approval. Then thunderous applause erupted. Dad tried desperately to leave, but was held back by an increasing crowd, interviewed, comforted, and photographed. When it was all over, Dad's face turned ashen, like he'd been poisoned. I'd never seen Dad this silent and furious before. He stormed out without a word, while I trailed behind clutching my backpack. Little did he know, his heroic moment had already gone viral online, with news outlets considering nominating him for Father of the Year in our city. On our way home, we got stuck in traffic because of some jerk cutting in line. Dad honked the horn angrily and rolled down the window, unleashing a torrent of curses. The driver in the opposite car took one look at my father and burst out laughing. Hey, isn't that the janitor, Dad? What kind of jalopy is this? A vintage citron from the Stone Age. Guess his stutter disappears when he's cussing someone out. Dad flew into a rage. You're the damn janitor, not me. I'll bury you in cash. You hear me? I found it hilarious. Didn't you claim to be a janitor yourself? Everyone thought you were one. Why the outburst? It's all your fault. Spouting nonsense. What kind of awful essay is this? Dad slammed the door shut the moment he got home and started yelling at me. I burst into tears immediately. What did I even do wrong? Mom rushed over and hugged me, then turned to Dad after hearing the whole story. Exactly. What did our daughter do wrong? Dad opened his mouth but couldn't find the words. After all, he was the one pretending to be poor, claiming he worked as a janitor and even shined shoes for a living. Now he was caught in his own web of lies with no way out. Serves you right, but Dad just can't swallow this insult. He glared at me viciously. You're the one who ruined my career. Then he turned to glare at Mom. Keep coddling her, and she'll be the death of you. Mom immediately retorted loudly, that's nonsense. I know my daughter better than anyone. You're the one being unreasonable. I'm being unreasonable. Fine. So it's all my fault then. Maybe I should just leave. You've all been sick of me for a long time anyway. With those words, Dad slammed the door and stormed out. Left alone with Mom, we just stared at each other in silence. Is Dad mad at me? Mom, did I do something wrong? I asked guiltily. Mom's eyes held both confusion and anger. She probably couldn't figure out what Dad was so upset about either. When she saw the news about the most admirable father on her phone, she actually thought my writing was good, saying I was exceptionally mature and talented. In the end, the matter was left unresolved. But Mom couldn't help feeling sorry for Dad. Whenever he came back asking for money, she'd still give him some. This simply won't do. I was racking my brains, completely at a loss about what to do. Tiffany bumped into me. She was showing off her new ergonomic backpack that supposedly doesn't strain your shoulders at all. Cost over $2,000. Then she turned and asked if I'd ever seen anything like it. Before I could answer, she covered her mouth and giggled. Oh look, I totally forgot. Your dad's just a janitor, not like mine who owns a business. I smirked. But your mom's the side chick. my dad's sugar baby. Saw them sneaking out of the utility room last week, her face all flushed from his kisses. Tiffany's eyes widened before she let out a piercing shriek. Nora, I'll strangle you. Then she lunged at me. No way, I'd just stand there and take it. Having lived a second life gave me a decade's worth of experience over her. When she grabbed my hair, I went straight for her eyes. She kicked me in the stomach, so I pinched her thigh. In the end, we both got called into the office. My dad only came after getting the call about me fighting with Tiffany. The first thing he said when barging in was to make me apologize to Tiffany. Tiffany gloated. Apologize now? Even your dad said it's your fault. I refused. You hit me first. You insulted me first. Only because you mocked my dad for being a janitor. Tiffany froze, then quickly turned to my dad with an ingratiating look. I was just joking with her. Who knew she'd suddenly lose her temper? My father nodded and without a word, strode over and slapped me across the face. When I tell you to apologize, you apologize. Have you forgotten who raised you? You dare disobey me. Do I even exist as your father anymore? My cheek burned with pain, and I staggered back several steps. Mom arrived just in time to witness this scene. Harold, how dare you hit my daughter? Mom's eyes widened as her voice shot up several octaves. Even I was startled, let alone Dad, who froze completely. 5. What are you doing here? Dad gasped in surprise. Mind your own business, Mom said. I discreetly tucked my kid's smartwatch behind my back. After a long pause, Dad defended himself. Nora bullied her classmate first. Of course I had to discipline her. That poor girl's being raised by a single mother who's already struggling enough as it is. Mom furrowed her brows without a word, pulling me close to examine me carefully as she asked what had happened. Don't be afraid. Just tell the truth, no matter what it is. I'll believe you. At that moment, I nearly burst into tears. I sniffled and nodded vigorously. Tiffany just mocked my dad for being a janitor who couldn't afford her designer backpack, so I fired back that her mom was the mistress my father kept on the side. Even the homeroom teacher was mortified. Dad turned pale with shock. What nonsense are you spouting, kid? No wonder she hit you. Mom noticed something was off. Harold, why have I never seen you wear this outfit and shoes before? You're even wearing cologne and hair gel. The click of high heels echoed from outside. Sarah's laughter arrived before she did. Harold, they're just kids. Don't be so harsh. Her awkward stance kept her from noticing my mom at first. She marched straight to my dad and planted a full French kiss without warning. The homeroom teacher never expected a simple parent-teacher conference to turn into a cheating scandal. Mom immediately slapped Harold twice across the face. This first slap is payback for Nora, and this second one is from me. Without waiting for Dad's explanation or apology, Mom grabbed my hand and stormed off the moment she finished speaking. This time, Mom was genuinely furious. Turns out my hopelessly romantic mother still has some principles and boundaries after all. That very night she returned, she cut off Grandma's medical funding. With money to spare, she immediately hired investigators to dig into Harold's affairs, only to discover he'd made millions last year. His first act with newfound wealth was tracking down his long-lost muse and her daughter, buying them a home and car to keep them close. Probably forgot which school I attended, which is how Tiffany accidentally became my desk mate. Mom's heart sank at the sight. I feared she might collapse from grief, but to my surprise, she wiped her tears and bounced back the next day, still juggling 3 jobs with unshakable determination. I finally couldn't help but urge her to take a break. Now that we don't have to care for Grandma anymore, there's no rush to earn so much. Your health should come first. I'm terrified Mom might get lung cancer again from overworking. I can't bear the thought of losing her a second time. Mom pinched my cheek with a smile. This time, I'm earning money for you. Don't worry, this won't last long. Once I save enough to open the shop, things will get much easier. I couldn't persuade her, so I came back after school every day to help. Dad wasn't doing well over there. At first he was thrilled, feeling finally free, but by posing as a janitor and pretending to be poor, he missed out on several lucrative opportunities. Mom stopped covering Grandma's medical bills too, leaving him to foot the entire expense. On top of that, there was a mother-daughter duo burning through money like there's no tomorrow. Dad's bank account saw nothing but withdrawals with 0 deposits coming in within 2 months. The financial strain became unbearable and regret set in. For the past 2 months, Tiffany has been competing with me at school at every turn. 6. If my mom bought me a new hair clip, Tiffany would show up with a more expensive one the very next day. when I got a limited edition pencil case from my mom, Tiffany started using a tiny LV purse as her pencil holder the following day. My dad bought this for me. Oh wait, I forgot, you don't have a dad anymore. I nodded, yeah. You can have the janitor dad. Tiffany's face darkened as she screeched. You're just jealous. He's never been good to you, but he dotes on me, and he's not a janitor. He's the boss. Oh, I pulled out my report card. What a bummer. Another perfect score. Tiffany clamped her mouth shut resentfully, as if someone had grabbed her by the throat, robbing her of speech. Serves her right for always coming in last. Finally, 3 months after leaving home, Harold came to regret his decision. He secretly followed me to Mom's newly opened shop. After 3 months apart, Mom looked completely different, though still beautiful. The perpetual worry that used to crease her brows had vanished. Now she greets every customer with such warm, graceful smiles. It's like she's glowing with a soft filter. Harold stood there, utterly mesmerized. He remained rooted to the spot, silent, until his mother noticed him. The moment mirrored their first meeting, back when his mom worked part-time at a bubble tea shop, and he was still a college student on financial aid. Mom said he looked just like a pitiful stray puppy back then, and she couldn't help but buy him a cup of milk tea. After that, she often looked at him with pity and compassion, always feeling an irresistible urge to take care of him. Seeing this scene made my heart ache terribly. I was afraid Mom still had lingering feelings for him. Mom glanced at Harold and immediately looked away. Lucky, come here. Mom waved me over. A chubby little black dog with 4 white paws appeared before me. Oh, I exclaimed in delight as I scooped up the puppy. Where did you come from? Found it. Mom's bleeding heart acted up again. I quickly added, the only strays you can bring home are cats and dogs. Mom nodded emphatically. Absolutely right. We ignored Harold the whole time, but he just wouldn't give up. Wendy, Harold stammered. I regret it. You have no idea. That mother and daughter clearly treated me like an ATM. Not a single day went by without them spending money. I'm under tremendous pressure now. My mom snapped impatiently. What exactly are you trying to say? Can you please help me? I've got this strong premonition. I dreamed I became a billionaire CEO. The only catch is I died before enjoying the fortune. But the dream felt so real I'm convinced it's prophetic. If you just take me back, if we could be like before, we're still legally married after all. I swear I'll stop pretending to be broke. I'll make you my executive wife. Mom burst into bitter laughter hearing Harold's grandiose monologue. How dare you say that? Mom turned and asked, tell me, how can someone be this shameless? A regular immediately chimed in, boss lady. So this is your ex who pretended to be broke. What was he thinking? Too cheap to spend on his own family. What a clueless idiot. Must have shit for brains. Ha ha ha. Oh, so that's him. Handsome face but such trashy behavior. What a disgrace. Quite a few guests were drawn in. Someone began vividly recounting the scene, growing increasingly awkward. Harold turned and left amidst the crowd's laughter. Before leaving, he made sure to tell his mother firmly, I'll show you my determination. But before any determination could be shown, Tiffany slipped something into my drink. After PE class, I went to take a sip of water when I noticed a strange smell coming from my bottle. I immediately reported it to my homeroom teacher, who helped me call the police. The police arrived and analyzed the water glass, confirming it had been laced with pesticide. Fingerprints on the cup identified Tiffany as the poisoner. Tiffany burst into tears, while Sarah wore an expression of regret. Why cry? You're under 14, even murder isn't illegal for you. What can they possibly do? The police truly couldn't touch Sarah or her daughter, even when she openly showed hostility toward me. There was nothing to be done but reprimand and educate her. But she never expected Harold to charge forward, swing his arm wide, and slap Sarah twice, hard, just to show off in front of my mom. 7. I told you, do whatever you want. But don't lay a finger on my woman or my daughter. Harold, you regret it, don't you? I knew you couldn't let them go. If I hadn't had my daughter poison them, I'd never have seen you wavering again. Sarah looked utterly shocked, wailing as she grappled with him while Tiffany sobbed uncontrollably nearby. The officers exchanged glances, stunned by what they'd just heard. The whole fiasco ended with Sarah facing criminal charges for inciting a minor to commit poisoning. Harold panicked upon learning Sarah was likely to be convicted. He blocked the shop entrance to plead for Sarah while Mom was working. If you just forgive her, she won't go to jail. I'll do anything you ask. Enraged, Mom grabbed a broom and started hitting him. That's your own daughter, you monster. She nearly killed her, and you're still defending her. Harold said with deep affection. No matter what, she was once mine. My mother gave a bitter smile. What about me? Do I deserve this? In her past life, Mom toiled selflessly for the family, even letting pneumonia worsen into lung cancer to save money, yet Dad never said a word. Not only did he refuse to contribute a single penny, but he also used this matter to test me. I risked my body testing medications, yet under Sarah's twisted interpretation, he judged me as selling my dignity for money, letting rage consume me until it killed me. And now, he's still putting on this show of devotion. I find it utterly ironic. He probably doesn't know. To Sarah, he's just a rebound guy. Sarah's ex-husband was inherently violent, in and out of prison multiple times. In their past life, when Sarah's ex first came knocking, Harold had money to spare. He casually hired some bodyguards to beat him up and set him up to land back in prison. A decade later, Sarah's ex-husband was released from prison and ran over Harold with his car the very same day. Sarah, who always seemed devoted to Harold, turned around and signed a waiver of prosecution, then took his inheritance and made a glamorous reunion with her ex-husband. According to the timeline, Sarah's ex-husband should be released within the next month or two. This time around, Harold's broke, can't even afford bodyguards. With that thought, I whispered into Mom's ear. Though somewhat skeptical, Mom relayed my message to Harold as I'd asked. All right, I'll forgive you, on two conditions. Harold nodded confidently. You have my word. First, divorce me. Second, take out an accident insurance policy with my daughter as the beneficiary. Clutching the insurance documents and divorce papers, Mom was glowing with vitality, yet she remained puzzled. What's the point of insurance? Such a waste of money on him. I graduated from elementary school. On the day Mom took me out to celebrate, someone from the insurance company called her. Are you Harold's family member? You previously purchased an accident insurance policy with coverage up to $10 million, correct? If you're available today, our claims adjuster can visit to discuss the details. Mom sounded surprised. That's fine, but may I ask what happened? Here's what happened, Mr. Harold was in a car accident and passed away despite medical treatment. After hanging up, Mom looked shocked for a moment, but soon busied herself preparing food for the guests. In the afternoon, insurance investigators came by and conducted a series of inquiries. After ruling out any foul play by my mother to commit insurance fraud and confirming it was indeed an accident, they told us to just wait patiently for the compensation payout. Mom gave me a suspicious look. I rubbed my nose and said, Tiffany mentioned her biological dad was violent, did time in prison, and is about to be released. Someone like that would definitely clash with my dad. The realization finally dawned on Mom. She went back to calmly preparing ingredients for tomorrow's sale. I kept helping peel the potatoes. Lucky thought it was a game and kept snapping at the potato peels. Eventually, he got tired and dozed off right on top of the mountain of peels. My heart overflowed with love in that moment. Let's consider this $10 million as Dad's little way of making up for pretending to be poor. A small compensation for Mom and me in our later years. Story 2. I died in the third year of the zombie outbreak. Scarcity of resources made survival extremely tough. My fiancé and best friend pushed me into a horde of zombies over an expired can of food. 1. Suddenly, I woke up and realized I had been given a second chance at life. I checked the date on my phone. There was still 1 month before the zombie outbreak. 2. I lived alone in a suburban villa left to me by my parents, though I usually stayed at my university dorm. On the day of the outbreak, my fiancé and my best friend happened to be at my villa. I have the tendency to hoard, driven by a mix of compulsive behavior and a knack for collecting, especially during sales when I would buy items in bulk if the price was right. In the cellar of my villa, I stored 20 bags of rice and flour, each weighing 100 kilos, 100 containers of 20 kilos of cooking oil, and several tons of purified water. I had purchased 4 or 5 huge freezers for the basement, all packed full with 200 kilos each of pork, beef, and lamb, along with various types of frozen foods. The number of instant meals and snacks was countless, with dozens of boxes of instant noodles alone in various flavors. Exaggeration aside, I could have lived off these supplies for a lifetime if they never expired. The non-perishable items, such as various kinds of paper products, sanitary pads, blankets, clothing, and toiletries, filled an entire 20 square meter storage room. Seeing my stockpile, they were all incredibly surprised, and John kept praising my foresight. With these supplies, the 3 of us managed to stay inside the villa. By the 3rd year, however, the supplies began to rot and spoil. forcing us to venture outside in search of food. Only before my death did I learn that my fiancé, John, was with me only for the house, and he had been having an affair with my best friend, Mila. 3. After waking up again, to avoid any trouble, I immediately arranged a fake medical emergency document and went to the school to request a leave of absence. The counselor, seeing me so close to death yet handling my leave personally, was moved to tears and almost bowed to me on the spot, though that was really not necessary. After successfully taking a leave from school, I blocked everyone's contact details, following the typical campus rumors. It probably wouldn't take 3 days before news of my death spread. This was fine by me. It was as if I had simply disappeared. Since I was getting a fresh start, I didn't want to get entangled with anyone again. For, leaving school, I took out all the savings my parents had left for me and immediately had my villa fortified. The entire perimeter of the villa was reinforced with a 2-meter-high iron mesh that was impenetrable, topped with high-voltage wires and sharp spikes. The security grills on the main door were reinforced threefold, making them impervious even to power saws. I also had workers dig a deep trench around the perimeter of my villa. Any approaching zombies would fall into it. The villa's interior was fortified as well, with iron plates sealing the basement tightly. Solar panels were installed on the roof, and I brought in 2 generators from a nearby factory to prepare for potential power outages. I cleared the original garden to use the space for growing food, purchasing various seeds and agricultural books. Water being a critical resource in the apocalypse, I used the spare rooms in the villa to store it. The rooms previously occupied by John and Mila were now storage spaces. After making these basic modifications to the villa, my next step was to make extensive purchases. I liquidated all my money and maxed out every possible loan I could obtain. Of course, I had my limits. I definitely avoided unscrupulous lenders. Thankfully, online loans helped me gather 5 million, coincidentally. 3 days after my rebirth, there was a major online shopping festival. During those 3 days, as workers fortified my villa, I shopped relentlessly through the night. Grains, oils, salt, vinegar, toiletries, first aid supplies, fast food, snacks, everything I could think of went into my shopping cart. I claimed every possible coupon and took advantage of every deal, determined to spend the least amount of money for the most goods. When the shopping festival began at midnight, I used the quick reflexes I had honed over 20 years of being single to swiftly check out my cart, even managing to snag many free gifts. Due to the huge amount, I also received many additional grand prizes. Thanks to the shopping festival, I managed to buy almost 10 million worth of goods from the supermarket for 4 million. That night, I went to sleep utterly satisfied. In the following days, I was busy receiving parcels. I organized and sorted all the parcels in the storage rooms of my villa. In order to maximize space, I dismantled all the packaging boxes that could be taken apart. I didn't throw away the dismantled boxes either. I piled them up on the empty land of the villa. As these cardboard boxes have many uses, they can serve as beds or even be used as fuel during the days of waiting for deliveries and renovating the house. I dug up many odd and seemingly useless items from SHN and the seafood market: old fishing lines, flint and steel, climbing ropes, drones, camouflage outfits, professional storm jackets, hiking boots. Such outdoor survival equipment is generally expensive when new, but some second-hand items were incredibly fresh and also at bargain prices. I had no specific requirements for new or old. As long as they worked, that was fine. After the renovations were complete, I started to go out. I needed to purchase some things that couldn't be bought online, like weapons. I had already bought baseball bats and zwilling kitchen knives. But I was worried that frequent searches and purchases might alert the cyber police. I didn't want to waste precious time dealing with the police and explaining why I suddenly prepared so many supplies. In my country, it's always tough to get weapons. I put in a lot of effort, diving deep into whatever alley was needed. Eventually, I indeed found it: a black market. Weapons were expensive, and with the 1 million I had left, I couldn't really buy much. Moreover, the leader of the black market made me somewhat nervous. He was incredibly handsome, his rugged charm almost suffocating, and just his gaze made my calves tremble. I hastily bought 2 guns and 5 magazines of bullets, along with 2 knives, and just wanted to leave. But as I turned to leave, I heard, "Wait, give her 2 more grenades." Holding 2 grenades with a bewildered face, the man smoking a cigarette suddenly laughed. "Little girl, what are you buying these for?" I kept my head down and didn't make a sound. He asked again, Do you know how to use them? I softly replied. I've seen them used on TV, he scoffed. All right, having bought the weapons, I felt happy, but when I returned to the villa, I saw people that annoyed me. John and Mila were at the entrance of my villa, and I saw him actually using a crowbar on my door. I was almost furious enough to rush over. That was a door I spent 100,000 on. The zombies haven't even arrived yet. And if you dare break it, I'll shoot you right away. With a gun in hand, my spine was incredibly stiff. I caught them red-handed trying to pick the lock, and there was a moment of awkwardness. But soon John urgently accused me. Josephine, I heard from the counselor that you were critically ill with brain cancer. Why didn't you tell me? Mila added. Yeah, Josephine, why did you block us? Do you know how worried we were? They stood as if on a moral high ground, as if under a halo of sanctity, as if I really had brain cancer. If it weren't for the figurative cancer in my brain, why would I have supported these two ingrates for 3 years in my past life? Now they were so anxious, but did they really think I couldn't see the excitement in their eyes? I have no heirs, and if I died, they could take over my villa. Unfortunately, with just a week until the apocalypse, every second was critical. I didn't have time to deal with them. I needed to get inside, but then I heard John's strange voice from behind. Josephine, why did you make the house look like this? My heart suddenly skipped a beat. Maybe she's afraid she borrowed from loan sharks and couldn't pay back, so she'd be chopped up. A cool voice rang in my ear, and this time, it wasn't just my heart skipping a beat, it nearly stopped outright. It turned out to be that notorious gang leader, Jonathan. Just as I thought, this young lady here disappeared off the face of the earth after borrowing money from us. One of his lackeys pointed at me and shouted. John and Mila looked puzzled. Josephine, what's this about? You took out a high-interest loan. Seeing their anxious faces, one might think I had meddled with their life savings. I made up a story on the spot. I was sick, and I used all the money for medical expenses. I didn't want to mortgage the house my parents left me, so I borrowed $5 million with high interest for the treatment. $5 million, John and Mila were shocked, but before they could say anything, the gang leader clicked his tongue impatiently. His presence was overwhelming. In an instant, John, Mila, and I obediently lined up like 3 little chicks, almost bowing and greeting him as uncle. Can you two help her pay back the money? He asked. John and Mila shook their heads with a complex expression. The gang leader scoffed. Then why don't you scram? Want to end up maimed like her? John and Mila slinked away dejectedly, leaving me standing alone in the wind, fragile as a chick. Josephine, debtor number 001, you owe us $500,000 with compound interest of 10%. Today is the repayment day. Well, young lady, using my money to buy weapons from me, and now it's time to pay up, the gang leader said, holding a cigarette and a ledger, ready to collect the debt on the spot. I swear I never took out such a ruthless loan, and I suspected the gang leader was mocking me, but I dared not utter a word. With less than a week until the zombie outbreak, aside from the live poultry and seafood I had ordered, only the water recycling system had yet to arrive. Calculating my finances, I felt a chill of desolation. I had budgeted too tightly, not to mention 50,000. I couldn't even come up with 500. I pulled a hand grenade from my pocket. Big brother, would this work as payment? The gang leader glanced at the grenade in my arms. Using the very thing I gave you to settle your debt. Josephine, you're really something, I replied modestly. It works, right? Who else did you borrow from? I don't remember. The gang leader chuckled again. Wow, you're really something. In the end, the gang leader didn't get his money. When he left, he even left behind 2 buckets of red paint, claiming they were too heavy to carry. According to his underling, red paint is a standard issue for their debt collection trips. It's just that they had never seen a villa fortified like a bunker, already disgraceful enough without needing a splash of paint. Looking at my postmodern Chinese-style villa, I scoffed as coolly as the gang leader. Cut it out, what do they know? I joyfully put the paint in a cart and wheeled it inside. This was a great find. The smell of paint could numb the zombie's sense of smell, a truly unexpected gain. The gang leader came to collect debts again, but this time he was alone. When he arrived, I was digging a trench in front of the villa. He stood silhouetted against the light, his expression unclear, while I was covered in dirt in the trench. Seeing that he didn't seem inclined to bury me alive, I started setting up fishing lines and twisting hemp ropes in the trench, determined to stop all zombies at this final line of defense. After watching for a while, he left without a word. What a strange man. 3 days before the zombie outbreak, my preparations entered the final sprint. The chickens, ducks, and piglets I had purchased were all secured in pens, and the fish, shrimp, and crabs were placed in the ponds I had dug in my backyard. The custom water recycling and distillation systems were in place, ensuring my water supply for the post-apocalyptic period. Due to the large quantity of goods I had ordered online, there were some issues with customer service. Having no other choice, I opted for a refund. This left me with some extra cash on hand, including my final credit card and the Ant credit limit. I prepared to go out for one last shopping trip just in time, according to my plan. I would spend most of the first 3 years of the apocalypse in my villa. To alleviate boredom, I downloaded novels, TV shows, movies, and games onto every electronic device at home, including TVs, computers, tablets, the Switch, and the PS5. At the city's second-hand book market, I bought truckloads of outdated comics and magazines by weight as scrap. Not only could I read them, but I could also use them as firewood after finishing them. With these preparations, I was set to comfortably spend my time alone during the apocalypse. In my previous life, it was always me who went out to find food while Mila and John made excuses, one fearing danger and the other wanting to guard our supplies, unwilling to venture out. This time, I refused to be the sacrificial saint. I first drove my father's old van, which he used for his business, to haul dozens of barrels of diesel. It was hard to obtain, but necessary to fuel my 2 vehicles, a small van and an SUV. Then, I drove the van to the city's largest supermarket. I had carefully calculated my finances. With the cash I had on hand and the new bank card, I could spend up to 200,000. I intended to spend it all. I posed as a merchant stocking up for a small supermarket and checked for any gaps in the supplies I had already hoarded. My focus this time was on perishable green vegetables. I planned to half refrigerate them and half turn them into pickles. The spoiled ones could still be used to feed my chickens, ducks, and geese. At the supermarket, the junior manager was thrilled to have a customer like me boosting his KPIs. He even kindly assigned a tall and strong loader to help me, but the moment I saw the loader, I fell silent for a second as a familiar scent hit me. It was Black Boss again. This was no ordinary helper. The manager had handed me a real headache. His sharp glance carried a warning, as if to say, "Speak out of turn, and you're dead." Black Boss actually helped me move the supplies. Dressed in a supermarket uniform and suppressing his usual thuggish aura, he almost seemed like an innocent young man. I heard the manager call him Jonathan. Seeing a big underworld boss actually carrying stuff for me, his muscles flexing perfectly as he moved, was quite the sight. It pushed my limits, and I couldn't help but feel a bit carried away. "Has your loan sharking business finally gone under?" I blurted out. "Leave it to me to say the wrong thing at the wrong time." He glanced at me sharply. "Even if it has, you still owe me money." "Ah, yes, of course." I nodded noncommittally. After all, with the apocalypse just 2 days away, 500,000 might not even be worth a bag of rice. And rice, I had as much as I needed. Maybe my attitude wasn't sincere enough, because Jonathan suddenly stopped what he was doing and frowned at me. "Have you got brain cancer?" I struggled internally, feeling like admitting it would make me seem like a deceitful woman who tricked him out of money and affection before dying. But my conscience got the better of me. "I'm fine, I was just tricking them." Jonathan's expression was unreadable. "Why?" I spoke softly. "They did bad things to me." Jonathan nodded, his tone fierce. "Good, if you didn't pay, I'd kill you." Is this man allergic to romance? How could he still be concerned about this in such a sad atmosphere, after moving almost everything? I prepared to leave. He suddenly asked, "Josephine, if you encountered someone who had deeply hurt you in the past, what would you do?" I thought about it and said seriously, "If a dog bites you, you can't always think about biting back. I'll continue living my life seriously on my own path. But if they come to hurt me again, I'll strike first." Jonathan smiled, a smile that reminded me of the heartthrob I had a crush on in high school. Pure and dazzling, it caught my eye. It wasn't until he looked over in confusion that I hastily shifted my gaze away. As I parted ways with Jonathan, he suddenly said to me, "Little liar, don't go out anymore once you return this time." I sat in the car, puzzled, and tilted my head. Suddenly, the news on the supermarket TV started broadcasting. "Currently, a new virus is spreading in our city. Please wear masks when going out and avoid crowded places." I quickly turned to look at Jonathan. His expression was ambiguous. His lips moved silently saying to me, "Let's go." I drove home in a panic, thinking I had planned everything well, but I overlooked one thing: the apocalypse might not arrive in an instant. Perhaps, in the densely populated college towns and city centers, signs were already apparent. After reaching home, I immediately turned on the generator, connected the external high-voltage electricity, and retracted the planks across the trench. With mixed feelings, I lay in bed. I even dreamed about Jonathan, his enigmatic gaze flashing back and forth in my mind. That night, I didn't sleep well. 2 days before the outbreak of zombies, I dared not go out anymore. I began to tally up my final gains and, with my current supplies, I made a 10-year plan. Only disciplined and restrained use of supplies can sustain survival in this apocalypse. I've always had the habit of keeping a journal, so this wasn't difficult for me. Most of the food would gradually spoil within 1 to 2 years. Though freezing could slow this down, thanks to preservatives, the supplies I stocked, like instant noodles, canned goods, and compressed biscuits, could last many years without spoiling. However, after 5 years, the main sources of my food must be livestock and aquaculture products. Fortunately, when I was young, I helped my grandmother feed chickens and ducks, and during harvest, I even cut wheat and corn. Because of space limitations, it wasn't possible to build a large greenhouse in the villa's garden, so I crafted a simple one myself. After recording, I entered the kitchen to pickle the large amount of vegetables I had bought the day before into pickles. Seeing these vegetables filling the kitchen, Jonathan's figure suddenly appeared before my eyes. I shook my head. Stop thinking about it, Josephine. This might be the last time you see him. In a world where life is cheaper than dirt, everyone is struggling to survive. I just want to lie flat in my villa. And Jonathan, from the first moment I saw him, I knew he was someone to break new ground. He and I are from completely different worlds. I stored the pickled vegetables in the villa's cellar. After a busy day, I treated myself generously. Despite hoarding so many supplies, I couldn't help but indulge. For dinner, I had sugar and vinegar spicy shrimp and winter melon pork rib soup. It tasted great. Even if there's no room for culinary creativity in the apocalypse for 3 years, my cooking skills haven't gotten rusty. Having experienced the apocalypse before made me particularly cherish food, and I finished all the dishes with 2 bowls of rice. After dinner, I started binge-watching a series. Watching this half-finished series, I felt regretful. If I don't subscribe to premium viewing, this series will just be buried. Will the male and female leads with such different identities end up together in the end? Damn, I really want to know. Just as the plot reached its climax, sudden noisy shouting came from outside. Josephine, open the door quickly. Josephine, something's happened. Let us in. It was John and Mila. My face instantly hardened, eyes filled with gloom. As I left the room, I took the gun I had bought from Jonathan. Josephine, why won't you let us in? How can you just stand by and do nothing? Do you know something? And your villa, why has it suddenly turned out like this? Through the thick door, I could distinctly sense the ominous tone and resentment in his voice. The questions Jonathan had asked me earlier came to mind. I had always been worried about attracting police attention, but now, I thought, it was time. The door I had custom-made consisted of 3 layers. The outermost was a stainless steel security gate. The second layer was an electrified wire mesh. And the innermost was the actual door itself. I suddenly opened the door, and the calculations and cunning still visible on John and Mila's faces hadn't had time to disappear. They had many wounds on their bodies, and I was quite satisfied with the results of the traps I had set. Upon seeing me, they stiffened for a moment, then quickly put on ingratiating smiles. I responded with a smile too, then raised the gun in my hand. Bang! It was merely an exclamation, but it was enough to terrify John and Mila. John even screamed and hid behind Mila. Seeing their pathetic state suddenly made it all seem so pointless. Did I really want to stain my hands with the blood of such despicable people? I chose to reconcile with myself. Consider me a saint then. Ignoring their horrified faces, I closed the door and left. That night, I slept unusually soundly. However, in the middle of the night, I thought I heard some noises, but when I got up to check the next day, I found nothing. Today marks the day when the zombie apocalypse broke out in my past life. I spent the entire day in front of the TV, watching as each station that had been operating normally either turned into a news broadcast or just static. The world seemed to change in an instant. In the evening, I turned on the serialized TV show I had been watching the day before, but as expected, there was no new episode. At that moment, while I felt a sense of finality, there was also a tinge of regret. my solitary life in the apocalypse officially began. My villa is located in a remote area where zombies seldom appeared in my past life, and with my preparations this time, I haven't even seen a zombie yet. The occasional passing vehicle and the roar of its engine sometimes made me tense. In the apocalypse, the malevolence of human hearts can be even more terrifying than zombies. I suddenly realized there was a small problem with the chickens and ducks I had bought. Looking at several of them that kept eating but wouldn't grow, I fell silent. I thought, maybe I should just eat them today. It's no good them eating without growing. No family can sustain such a loss. However, considering the rarity of live poultry, I carefully searched the internet, which, though largely abandoned early in the apocalypse, still had some sites functioning. After some searching, I discovered that among my batch of meat chickens and ducks, there were 2 Rouen ducks and 2 Cornish chickens mixed in. I wondered, could they have been caught by mistake during an attempted escape? The night I decided to eat those few non-growing birds, as I was sharpening my knife, they each laid an egg, hesitating for a moment, and marveling at the greatness of life and the survival instinct of animals. I put down the cleaver and took out the egg incubator I had purchased in advance. I became fascinated with incubating eggs. Every morning, as soon as I woke up, I couldn't help but check on those 2 eggs. A week later, I placed the eggs under a light to inspect them. Seeing the faintly beating hearts and the growing blood vessels inside, my eyes welled up with tears. In the apocalypse, new life always brings joy. 32. In the following days, I became a diligent chicken mother. The hatching conditions and times for the looting chickens and cold ducks differ significantly. Looting chickens take 16 days, whereas cold ducks need 26 days and require higher air humidity than chickens. Daily, I meticulously recorded the conditions of these 2 eggs. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. This morning, I checked on my eggs as usual. The looting chicken's egg was due to hatch, but there was no sign of activity. Worried it might suffocate, I carefully made a small hole in the shell with tweezers. I spent the entire day crouched beside it, even skipping meals. When I finally saw the tiny beak of the looting chicken poking through the hole I had made, I couldn't help but cry tears of joy. 33. The little looting chicken was born, and I named it Reserve Grain No. 1. I brought its mother to see her, but she was too engrossed in her love affairs and had no interest in parenting. She glanced at it pretentiously, paid another egg as a protection fee, and then flapped her wings and left, looking at Reserve Grain No. 1 and a fresh, still warm egg in my hand. I gritted my teeth and thought, today, I'll raid your homes. 34. Eventually, I marked the new egg and placed it in the incubator. After checking on the still early cold duck, I went out to water the fruits and vegetables in my garden. Midway, I suddenly heard the call of a zombie outside. I was immediately alert. It was a living, moving zombie. This might be the first zombie I've seen since the apocalypse began, and it oddly excited me. I opened the inner door, and seeing the limping, armless, legless zombie outside, I felt a strange sense of familiarity. Living alone for so long, even a zombie seemed attractive, but once the novelty wore off, I quickly went back inside to grab my large machete. 35. Strangely, when I returned, the zombie had vanished. Puzzled, I wondered if it had wandered off elsewhere. Peeking around and seeing no trace of that zombie, I reluctantly put down the knife. Though I was itching for some action, I clearly preferred my laid-back lifestyle. 36. The looting chicken grew quickly, becoming independent in less than a week. She was a playful girl, joyfully running around the house and leaving little piles of poop as her signature. On the day the cold duck was due to hatch, its process proved much more challenging than that of the looting chicken. Thankfully, my experience helped, and although it was a harrowing process, I successfully ended up with a large, unrelated, and different species, son. 37. Recently, a very real problem has presented itself. Sitting solemnly in my vegetable garden, I watched the main culprits forming groups and causing trouble. Nearly 2 months since the birth of Reserve Grain No. 1, and looting chickens mature in just a month and a half. Considering the daily offerings from the initial looting chicken, I now had nearly 30 chickens, which would soon contribute to my flock at the rate of 1 egg per day. Sighing, I forced myself to stop this dreadful calculation. Just as I was worrying about how to manage the chicks I had hatched myself, I suddenly heard from outside, "Hello, money robbery loan, here to rob your money, debtor 001, when will you repay?" 38. I swiftly turned around, suppressing the surprise in my heart, and asked, "Who?" The person outside was clearly impatient, and I could almost picture him sneering with a cigarette in his mouth. Your creditor. I opened the small window in the door. Peering through the layers of wire mesh at the person outside, perhaps my incredulous stare was too dumbfounded, as he couldn't help but laugh. Blinded for a moment, my expression grew even more foolish. 39. Jonathan pulled out his ledger. Debtor 001, Josephine, currently 3 installments overdue, with compound interest. You owe a total of 200,000 this period. Seeing the complexity on my face, he raised an eyebrow. Is there a problem? I replied, I might look foolish to you, but I'm not blind. With a wild gesture, he flashed the empty ledger at me. Jonathan sneered. So, you're not paying? I nodded earnestly. I don't have the money. Just then, a looting chicken scurried over my foot, leaving a dollop of droppings on my shoe. Driven by desperation, I grabbed the chick and passed it through the small window towards Jonathan. As my hand was about to touch the high-voltage wire mesh, he suddenly frowned. Wait. This was the first time I saw Jonathan raise his voice. Startled, my calves trembled again. As I reached out my hand again, he pursed his lips. When he saw the looting chicken in my open palm, his eyebrows almost twisted into knots. Thinking he was dissatisfied with my offering, I pitched it hard. Don't be fooled by its size. It breeds quickly, producing a brood every month and a half, and it tastes almost like real chicken, especially delicious. Jonathan and the small chicken in my palm stared at each other, seemingly still unimpressed. I had no choice but to grab a few more, hoping to win by numbers. Through the door, I handed the chicks to him one by one. I urged him, take them, quick, with the zeal of a watchful mother. After a brief silence, Jonathan took the chickens. The moment our fingers touched, I felt a sting. Later, with too many chicks, Jonathan couldn't hold them all and stuffed them into his pockets. As Jonathan left, I saw reserve food no. One peeking out from his pocket. It looked up, its eyes wide, flapping its wings as if questioning my conscience. As he left, Jonathan dropped a line. This only counts as interest. After dealing with Jonathan, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was quite pleased. The overpopulation of looting chickens had been neatly resolved. Today is our country's Lunar New Year. The apple tree I planted in the backyard was also ready for a bountiful harvest. Hearing the familiar sound of pulling a slot machine outside, I peeked through the peephole and opened the door. Seeing my attire, Jonathan paused for a second. What are you doing? His tone uncertain. I looked down at my flower jacket, touched my green headscarf, my hand covered in ash, red and green. A sight for sore eyes. I'm picking apples. He seemed skeptical. Here to collect debts again? I asked. Jonathan nodded. I laughed. What a coincidence. I handed him a bag of apples. Use these to offset the debt. Apples, peace fruit, wishing you peace. He took the apples and before leaving, he turned away and said, Happy New Year. I paused, then softly replied, Happy New Year. After my parents passed away, I had gotten used to spending New Year's alone, in these apocalyptic times. Resources are precious, so I didn't indulge excessively and made a few exquisite dishes. I took out the sausages I had made with a sausage stuffer, well cured and tasty. Maybe next time Jonathan comes, I could use these to offset the debt. Suddenly, I realized, today, Jonathan seemed especially gullible, satisfied with just a few apples. I hope he stays this way. Amen. Tonight, I pulled out an old book I had scavenged before the apocalypse, and read it with great interest. After turning on the light for a while and finishing my reading notes, I went to bed early. That night, I had a wonderful dream. In the dream, there were my parents who had passed away early, and no zombies. Time flies, and soon after the new year, we're heading towards April. Recently, I unexpectedly found tadpoles in my pond, already growing hind legs while still dragging their tails. So, let's discuss a controversial topic from the perspective of the origin of the universe. Which came first? The chicken or the egg? There aren't any frogs in my pond, so where did these tadpoles come from? Worried about the tadpoles being eaten by fish, I set aside a separate part of the pond for them. In the following days, I joyfully awaited my tadpoles to grow into bullfrogs, and then turn into spicy bullfrog dishes, until Jonathan showed up again. When I mentioned that next time I might be able to offer him some bullfrog, he fell silent for a second. Then, with an indescribable look, he said, Josephine, did you know, the tadpoles from March to April are all toads? I was surprised and slowly widened my eyes. I angrily shut the door, blocking out Jonathan's mocking laughter on the other side. and adamantly refused to provide him with any offerings this time. If I can't have bullfrog, neither can you, no one gets to benefit. I checked on the only still functioning website. Indeed, tadpoles in early spring, March and April, are all toads. Frog tadpoles aren't around until May, during winter. Toads burrow into the mud, digging with their well-developed hind legs, to hibernate in caves. It seems that toads must have snuck into my pond to hibernate at the onset of the apocalypse. I had no choice but to reluctantly scoop all these tadpoles out. Although toads are beneficial for crops, I really can't stand their appearance. Just as I had bagged all the tadpoles and was wondering how to kill them, suddenly, I heard from outside, "Hand them all over to me once you're done. I'll let you off easy this time, consider it interest." It was Jonathan, and he hadn't left yet. When I handed him the bag, I curiously asked, "What are you going to do with these tadpoles?" He smiled, "Raise them and then go eat some swan meat." He always looked good, but even more so when smiling. Suddenly, I found myself looking forward to his next visit to collect debts. Recently, I've noticed an increase in zombies. This is abnormal, as it usually took up to the third year in the previous world for such an increase. If zombies are increasing even in my remote location, I wonder what it's like in the cities. Using a telescope, I checked the nearby area and, after confirming there were no abnormalities, I quickly took up my machete and killed all the zombies loitering near my villa. This wasn't difficult for me. After my parents passed away, I took up freestyle fighting, not to brag, but in our community, I'm undefeated in the 52 kilograms category. When Jonathan arrived, he just so happened to witness me chopping off the last zombie's head. Much like chopping vegetables, the head fell to the ground, bouncing a couple of times and scattering brain matter along the way. Jonathan and I, almost in sync, watched the bouncy head and subtly nodded with its rhythm. Aware of Jonathan's gaze, I sheepishly smiled, the blade of my large machete still dripping with an indistinct fluid. The atmosphere was both eerie and somewhat comical. 47. As I entered the house, Jonathan watched me, but I hesitated to invite him in. Given the state of the world, I held back from speaking. Fortunately, Jonathan seemed to disdain the taste of my bunker-like abode and showed no desire to come in. We had an unspoken agreement. He would visit periodically, and I would prepare supplies for him in advance. This time, I had prepared a basket of potatoes. June was the season for ripe potatoes. Unexpectedly, he refused to take them. I stared at him incredulously, wondering if he had lost his mind. In a world like this, to refuse even potatoes, how inflated must his ego be? But he simply said, "Josephine, don't go out anymore. Don't worry about the zombies outside. Someone will handle them." I blinked, not quite understanding his meaning. Someone to handle it? Are they going to use a forklift to move the zombies away? Jonathan gave me a look that made me feel as worthless as rotting wood. 48. Jonathan left, and the words he spoke as he departed left me feeling anxious and unsettled. Anxiety made it hard for me to sit still, and I regretted just watching him go without saying anything. Back at the villa, I moved through each room, repeatedly checking my supplies as if that could somehow make me feel secure. 49. Over the following days, the intervals between Jonathan's visits grew longer. Sometimes I had to replace the supplies I had prepared due to the risk of them rotting or spoiling from the prolonged wait. Then, after 3 months without a sign of him, I had fully returned to my solitary life. I no longer needed to worry about supplies. The fruits and vegetables I had planted were maturing in an orderly fashion, and my stock of supplies was starting to grow. Like a tireless squirrel, I began to store the surplus food by various means, preparing for the second winter since the apocalypse began. 50. Living alone was terribly lonely, even with the scarcity of resources in this post-apocalyptic world. I couldn't help but keep a pet. It was a core duck I had hatched early on, which I named Dada. Every morning, Dada would peck me awake by my bed. The way its little green eyes looked at me reminded me of how you urged me to meet deadlines. Core ducks don't eat much. As an adult, it only needed 3 meals a day. Besides its special duck feed, I'd also give it some spoiled vegetables. Dada wasn't picky at all, a real garbage disposal. I was very satisfied with its practicality. 51. Before the official onset of winter, Jonathan appeared again. At that time, I was harvesting radishes. Imagining the various dishes and pickles I could make with these plump, large radishes, he appeared silently at the door. And I ran to open it as if by telepathy. Seeing Jonathan, he looked thinner and darker, his body reeking of blood and a gloom that seemed too dense to dissipate. He appeared exhausted. Tentatively, I asked, Are you here to collect a debt? He shook his head. I came to see you. At that moment, my heart felt like it would leap out of my throat. He looked at my suddenly widened eyes and faintly curled his lips. Just as he was about to turn and leave, I suddenly spoke out, Jonathan. Would you like to come in and sit for a while? He turned back to look at me, his brow furrowed. Josephine, you still haven't learned. His suddenly stern tone made me feel a pang of sourness and grievance. 52, Jonathan left, and I had a feeling that this time, he might not return. 53, another winter has arrived. During this season, there are few green leafy vegetables available for consumption. Cabbage, spinach, and radishes are among the few that can withstand the cold. The piglets I bought before the apocalypse have grown and produced offspring twice. Once they started breeding, it became uncontrollable and my garden gradually became crowded. Furthermore, the smell was overwhelming, leaving my head buzzing all day. Eventually, due to limited space, I decided to turn to my pigsty. It's not easy to slaughter a pig on my own. The boar, which I had fattened, was heavy. After tying it up, I stepped on its head to hold it down, with a swift motion of my hand. The knife fell, ending its life. I butchered the whole pig, cleaned it, and stored the different parts separately. This task was not easy for me, as an adult boar of about a year old weighed around 400 to 500 kilograms, not to mention the pork. Just the offal weighed about 50 pounds. The smell was so strong, even zombies would shake their heads at it. After 2 days of continuous work, I finally finished processing the entire pig. When everything was done, I realized I had subconsciously set aside a portion. I looked at the extra 50 pounds of pork and offal I had reserved and fell silent for a moment. Then, I stored them separately in the freezer. 54. As the new year approached, I selected a perfectly shaped piece of pork belly and large intestines to prepare for roasting. I used the remaining good meat to make many dumplings, with fillings of pork and green onions, pork and cabbage, and pork with pickled vegetables. I made the dough and rolled out the skins myself, crafting each dumpling to look like an ingot, plump and drool-worthy. For the new year, fried food was a must. I enjoyed eating stuffed eggplant and lotus root, as well as crispy pork. I took the eggplants I had grown last summer from the freezer. It was hard to part with the lotus roots, as aquatic plants like these require stringent growing conditions. Eating a bit meant having less. When all was prepared and I looked back, I realized I had prepared more this year compared to the last. 55. With the growls of wandering zombies outside the villa, the new year quietly arrived. Even though I was alone in the villa, I could sense that the spread of zombies this time was more severe than before. I didn't know what was happening outside, but I hoped the zombie horde wouldn't reach my villa. Beyond that, I was powerless. This new year, due to the turbulent times, I couldn't feel a trace of joy. After finishing the New Year's Eve dinner alone and cleaning up the leftover food, I opened a new book. Just like last year, the book remained on its title page until night fell completely. Suddenly, a familiar roaring sound came from outside, and I dropped the book and ran outside, my face showing belated joy. 56. Just as I stepped outside, I suddenly paused. Frowning, I turned around to grab my binoculars to look outside, only to see that the person in the vehicle was not Jonathan. I immediately pulled up the high-voltage electric gate of the entire villa. To save electricity, the villa's lights were off, and I observed the people in the car from the shadows with my binoculars. He looked somewhat familiar. He was the underling who had come with Jonathan to collect debts before. He was the one who had grunted as he carried down those 2 buckets of red paint. Seeing him get out of the car, I cocked my handgun. 57. Surprisingly, after getting out of the car, he did not approach my villa. Instead, he raised his hands high. When he opened his palms, I saw a slick, shiny little chicken inside, holding its head high. It looked disdainfully at the foolish humans around it, clearly having been pampered regularly. The food seems to be pretty good, considering that there might not be a third person in the world capable of doing something as bizarre as raising ruddy chickens in the apocalypse. I opened the gate, separated by the high-voltage wire fence. I found myself staring eye to eye with this younger brother. He said his name was Joseph and that he was a confidant of Jonathan. Then, he showed me the token that Jonathan had sent with him, a ruddy chicken, an apple, a tomato, and a toad. It turns out Jonathan actually managed to raise those tadpoles. After showing them, he carefully packed the items back into the bag as if they were treasures. I was somewhat eager to find out why Jonathan had sent Joseph, but then Joseph did something that completely stunned me. He pulled out a blank ledger that had always been in Jonathan's possession, a ledger very familiar to me, right before my eyes. He tore it into pieces, as if he was severely cutting the already thin thread of connection between Jonathan and me. Then, he looked up seriously and said, Jonathan's exact words, "Debtor number 001, Josephine, your debts are fully paid off. From now on, there are no ties left." After that, without caring about my dumbstruck expression, he turned and left. Seeing him about to leave, I lost my composure and forgot about the electric fence as I started to chase after him. Joseph turned his head in fright and said, "Slow down." I was puzzled how he knew the layout of my house. Last time, when I was supposed to deliver something to Jonathan, he had reacted similarly. Suddenly, countless pieces of information flashed through my mind. I asked him, "Where is Jonathan?" Joseph pursed his lips, a sorrowful look on his face. "Jonathan, he's dead." I was silent for a couple of seconds, my tone complex. "Do you think I'm a fool?" He seemed to murmur, "Not a fool, just naive." I went, and said word by word, "I don't believe what you're saying." Joseph clenched his teeth. "It's true, Josephine, Jonathan is dead. Stop waiting for him." As he spoke, Joseph looked as if he was about to run as if chased by a dog. There might be some misunderstanding here," I said. I wasn't waiting for him. Caught off guard by my response, Joseph suddenly stopped leaving. He turned around furiously, looking at me as if I were a swindler. It was he who had started this, and now he seemed outrageously angry. Angrily, he said, "Why wouldn't you wait for him? Do you know with Jonathan's status, what kind of woman couldn't he have, now at the base? Even those former high society ladies and top celebrity women, each one clings to him. He hasn't even glanced at them because of who. It's all because of you. I don't know what kind of spell you've cast on him with all these little chickens and ducks. Yes, and that toad." Giving him a toad got him so obsessed he could be happy all day staring at that ugly thing with bubbles all over its head. Saying this, seemingly unable to contain his anger, Joseph pulled the toad out of the bag and thrust it towards me. Facing this ugly creature, I couldn't help but look away. Joseph got even angrier. "Jonathan treasures the thing you don't even want to see. Do you know how the base is now overrun with ruddy chickens to the point where Jonathan never lets us eat them?" Someone who secretly ate a few got assigned by Jonathan to spend a week on the search team's vanguard. I really didn't know how to respond. But that didn't stop me from grinning ear to ear. Seeing me like this, Joseph seemed to suddenly find some balance. He straightened his face and told me a lot of things. As he was leaving, he said very seriously, "Josephine, sister-in-law, I call you sister-in-law. Can you wait for Jonathan?" I learned a lot from Joseph. The first thing was about John and Mila. After scaring them with a gun that day, I lost all contact with them. I thought they had fled elsewhere. Unexpectedly, they actually died under the high voltage of my villa's electric fence that very night. That night, the noises I faintly heard in my dreams were of John and Mila getting electrocuted, and Jonathan having their bodies dealt with. Moreover, there's the occasional roar of vehicles near my villa. Joseph said that Jonathan sends people regularly to clear the zombies around my villa's perimeter. Not just zombies, but also those who covet my villa are secretly dealt with by Jonathan's men. Furthermore, I had never really taken out any high-interest loans. All of this, since I entered the black market, was nothing but a calculated excuse by Jonathan. Suddenly, many details I had previously ignored flashed through my mind. When I was looking for the black market, it seemed like someone was already there, guiding me step by step. Whenever I needed diesel, I would coincidentally get it. The various equipment I picked up cheaply at the seafood market all came from official channels. Also, in my previous life, when I went out alone to find food, I always felt a presence, a barely visible gaze watching over me. I don't know if these things were connected, but I want to ask Jonathan face to face for clarity. This year's winter was exceptionally cold and long. I used 3 times more firewood and electricity than last year and added several layers to my greenhouse for crops and poultry. Despite this, my poultry and plants still suffered some damage. Every morning I would find frozen dead poultry or vegetables. Sometimes it was chicks, sometimes fish, sometimes it was cabbage. Even those that didn't die looked wilted. They huddled together to stay slightly warm. Looking at the lone winter-sweet flower proudly standing on its branch in the garden, I secretly hoped that winter would pass quickly. Fortunately, by May, it finally began to warm up. I noticed that after this long cold winter, the number of zombies had greatly decreased. In my past life, when I died, experts had not yet figured out the principle behind the formation of zombies, but during 3 years of fighting zombies, people had gained some experience. Cold and darkness slowed down the zombies' movements, and the cold dulled their sense of smell. It was speculated, after an extreme and prolonged cold, the zombies might extinguish themselves, and the zombie virus would remain buried under the deep snow of that harsh winter. By then, people could look forward to a spring full of blooming flowers. I was somewhat hopeful. What I didn't wait for in my previous life might arrive in this one. After a long harsh winter, my vegetable garden, which I had painstakingly maintained for over a year, was almost destroyed. Fortunately, I had purchased a large quantity of seeds in advance. After shoveling out the completely frozen roots, I started a new round of planting before summer arrived. It was a daunting task, and it took me 4 whole days to complete. Due to the harsh winter, the entire seasonal pattern was disrupted, and I could only rely on my experience to plant the seeds of the corresponding season. After planting, time seemed to relax. I moved a lounge chair into the yard. While reading a book, I quietly waited for the new sprouts to emerge. 64. Lately, I've been hearing loud explosions coming from the center of the city for several days in a row. I'm far too distant from there, and even repeated attempts with a telescope didn't help as buildings blocked my view. While organizing the warehouse, I stumbled upon a drone I had picked up from a seafood market a long time ago. I tried to operate it, but it wouldn't work as the battery was depleted. After rummaging through, I found its charger. As it charged, I held my breath, feeling somewhat anxious. Seeing it fully charged and functioning properly brought a smile to my face. 65. I'm all thumbs with gadgets. I remember when I first got my driver's license, my driving instructor earnestly told me, "Josephine, after you get your license, lock it up in a safe. For the sake of humanity, never take it out again." The drone was shaky and hesitant as it took off in my hands. After several erratic spins and dives, it managed to decapitate half the head of a passing zombie, finally moving in a straight line. The drone's maximum control range is 7 kilometers, which is still too short from my villa to the city center, but through the drone's camera feed, I discovered that the loud explosions I've been hearing were actually humanity's onslaught against zombies. The area the drone could reach had few zombies left, and the fiercest battle now was in the city center where the zombies were most concentrated. This victory seemed almost within humanity's grasp. Retrieving the drone, my emotions were stirred for a long time. 66. One morning a week later, I was suddenly awakened by a huge commotion coming from the city center. Even from my distance, the noise was substantial, suggesting a grand scene at the center. I had a strong premonition that the apocalypse was over. At least, in my city, it was over. In that moment, my eyes welled up with tears, relieved. Yet I felt somewhat lost. 67. That day, I sat alone in my vegetable garden all day, seemingly sensing my unusual mood. Even the usually carefree Dada couldn't help but wobble over and look at me with its snout. It pecked at me. I pushed it away, and said seriously, "Don't disturb me, I'm thinking." Seeing me staring into space solemnly, Dada jumped into my lap, and we sunbathed together. As I basked in the warmth, I grew sleepy. In a drowsy state, I thought I heard a familiar lazy, dragging voice outside. Opened the door. I jolted awake, and Dada fell to the ground, confused and startled. 68. I turned my head straight towards the door, almost burning through it with my gaze. I wasn't sure if it was a dream or reality. I strained my neck to listen, but this time, I heard nothing. I laughed at myself mockingly. "Josephine, you really do seem like a distressed wife now." Jonathan was right. I never learn. I've never loved John. Agreeing to his advances was only because I felt lonely and craved familial warmth. I had long realized his affair with Mila. And not only was I not angry, I was even relieved that I could justifiably refuse his physical advances, not understanding why I suddenly felt so gloomy, enveloped by a somber mood. Dada was a bit perplexed. Quack. The next second, "Josephine, are you expecting your duck son to open the door for you?" I suddenly stood up with a whoosh and swiftly pulled the door open, seeing the person outside. Separated by the wire mesh, I remained silent, noticing my defiant expression. Jonathan suddenly burst into laughter. "Josephine, you really are something. I haven't seen you in a while, and you've even managed to gain some weight." What kind of thing is Jonathan saying? Having a good appetite is a blessing, and as for fairy matters, he should mind his own business. Jonathan had lost weight, almost to the point of being unrecognizable. His hair had grown longer and his stubble looked prickly, even through the distance of the door. I could smell the strong scent of gunpowder on him. He must have been involved in the recent siege downtown, and it's very likely he had just returned from the front lines. Was he here to share the joy of victory with me? After observing him for a while, I couldn't help myself. Jonathan, how could you let yourself go like this? He frowned at me, as if puzzled why I would even speak. We stood there in silence for a while, the atmosphere strange, and my big toe couldn't resist starting to fidget. I'm leaving, he said. That suddenly made me angry. I asked him, Jonathan, do you like me? He was taken aback, and before he could respond, I became completely unrestrained. Whether you like me or not, I'm laying it out today. I like you. He seemed utterly baffled by my words. For the first time, I experienced the joy he felt when he used to watch me act foolish. After a while, he came back to his senses. He chuckled. Josephine, such words shouldn't be initiated by a girl. It seemed like there was no one else in the world I cared about. I told him, a fairy gets what she wants. I kicked the iron door open, and under my fierce momentum, he respectfully stepped aside. Walking up to him, I looked him straight in the eye. This was the first time I stood this close to Jonathan. Stay today, I said. Then, I grabbed his hand and led him inside. He was pulled along for a couple of steps, and just as he was about to step through the door, he suddenly grasped my wrist. Surprised, I turned to look at him. He looked at me seriously, asking, Josephine, I am a grown man. Do you understand what it means when you say these things to me? I replied, of course I know, Jonathan, you've already taken the 99 steps. Why falter at the last one? Wasn't it you who provoked me first? Hearing my words, Jonathan laughed, a mischievous gleam in his eyes. The next second, he took charge, pulling me towards the house with an urgent air. Inside the house, enveloped by its cozy atmosphere, Jonathan and I seemed to finally snap out of our reckless mood, and just standing there felt awkward. Pretending to be casual, I said, there's hot water in the electric heater that I filled up this morning. Go take a shower. I'll get my dad's old razor for you. Oh, and maybe shave your head too. Your hair is almost covering your eyes. Jonathan hummed in agreement, and then let me fuss over him, considering my limited skills as a barber. I simply gave Jonathan a buzz cut. In the mirror, I saw Jonathan sitting. I stood there. He kept staring at me, his gaze so intense that my hand, which was touching his hair, couldn't stop trembling. In this life, I didn't have many men's clothes on hand, so I gave Jonathan a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants. You go shower first. I'll cook for us. I fished a trout and some shrimps from the pond, took out some stored vegetables from the cold room, and grabbed the pork that was left from yesterday's cooking. I cooked sweet and sour fish, blanched shrimp, scrambled eggs with tomatoes, and cabbage-wrapped pork. I also caught a couple of chickens and stewed a bowl of chicken soup. Halfway through cooking, Jonathan finished his shower. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him wearing the clothes I gave him, arms crossed and head tilted, leaning casually against the kitchen doorframe. He was watching me the whole time, distracted. I accidentally added an extra spoonful of salt. The rice bubbled merrily as it cooked, and when it was time to let it simmer, I served the chicken soup, prepared the blanched shrimp with dipping sauce, and added scallions, ginger, garlic, 2 spoons of soy sauce, a spoon of steamed fish soy sauce, half a spoon of rice vinegar, and half a spoon of sesame oil into a bowl. I then topped it with hot oil, tiny millet peppers, and green onions, and mixed everything well. I softly announced, dinner's ready. Jonathan naturally came over and began serving the dishes I had prepared. When I took out the 2 bowls of rice, he was already sitting there waiting for me. At that moment, I felt as if Jonathan was touched by the mundane joys of human life. After eating, Jonathan told me a story. He spoke of a man who grew up in the mud, working his way up to be a minor leader in the black market. Then, the apocalypse arrived. This minor leader, along with the black market boss, established a base. The base was in chaos, its inhabitants barely more alive than dead. Violence and the trading of lives were rampant here. Human life was cheaper than dirt. Women would sell themselves for a loaf of bread. Men would betray their wives and children, and friends and family would stab each other in the back. When weighed down by extreme distress, the minor leader would sneak to a deserted area nearby to smoke during his supply runs. One day, a girl appeared in this forsaken place. She always went out alone to gather supplies, hurried and vigilant. It's worth mentioning that her driving skills were consistently terrible. sometimes so bad that the minor leader couldn't help but worry for her. Eventually, the minor leader discovered she lived with another man and woman. She looked after them like a mother. But the couple had an affair whenever she was away. The minor leader realized his interest in the girl had grown beyond mere curiosity. In such chaotic times, a man of his humble origins didn't deserve to entertain thoughts of love. His heart was moved, yet he withdrew it. One day, as usual, he went out for supplies, but he felt a constant twitch in his right eyelid, instinctively sensing danger. He thought perhaps his end was near, always prepared for the worst. He didn't expect to see the girl pushed defenselessly into a horde of zombies. In a moment of madness, he turned his gun, meant for the zombies, towards the deceitful couple, and in an instant, he was completely overwhelmed by the zombie horde. Later, I asked him, "Jonathan, why didn't you come to find me from the start?" He replied, "Josephine, a nation must exist before a home can, in this life. I wanted to build a home for you, and, 10 days before the zombie outbreak, I won the lottery and received 300 million yuan. I bought an abandoned prison in City X and transformed it into a Grade S biochemical defense base. I also stocked up on a large amount of food and water, preparing to lead a laid-back life. But could I really afford to be laid back? In a world where human order was lost and chaos reigned, guarding a large stash of supplies made me a prime target. In reality, the most terrifying things in a post-apocalyptic world aren't the zombies, it's human nature. And that secret, the decaying corpses with blood-red eyes and foul drool charged at me from all directions, densely packed with no end in sight. I knew there was no way back. Staring at the mountain of cash before me, I reluctantly pulled the trigger in my hand, only to find there were no bullets left. Ultimately, my brief and frustrating life ended under the relentless tearing of countless zombies. A bright light stung my eyes, and as I opened them, my blurry consciousness slowly began to clear. I looked around at the familiar yet dilapidated surroundings, my face filled with utter confusion. Wait, hadn't I died in the zombie apocalypse? How did I end up back here? Could it be that I had been reborn? In disbelief, I pinched the black and white face of dog Jojo beside me, ow, accompanied by Jojo's unique, duck-like yelp. I finally convinced myself that I truly had been reborn. I glanced at the time on my phone, July 20th, 2035, 10:20 a.m. There were exactly 11 days until the apocalypse. Only 10 minutes had passed since my lottery win had been deposited. In my previous life, after receiving the 300 million, I had bought luxury cars and a mansion, withdrawing the remaining money to pile up in my home, indulging in a lavish lifestyle akin to that of a wealthy tomato tycoon. However, my ostentatious life lasted only 11 days before the zombie outbreak erupted. Thus, the initial scene unfolded where I guarded my mountain of cash and was dismembered by zombies. Now given a second chance, I was determined not to make such foolish mistakes again. While internally reviewing how foolish my past self had been for 1 minute and 57 seconds, Jojo, unable to hold back, let out another one of his uniquely charming duck-like yells. Jojo was a dog I owned, specifically a husky. Being an orphan with no relatives, Jojo was my only family. Jojo bared his teeth and frantically pawed at the ground, his eyes brimming with tears as he vented his grievances, questioning why I had pinched his handsome face. If I didn't provide a satisfactory explanation, he threatened to end it all with me. After I threw him a chicken leg, he abandoned his grudge and lay on the ground, contentedly enjoying his treat, having recovered from the shock of rebirth. I quickly began to plan my next steps. The zombie virus had leaked from a biochemical lab in City X. Once released, it spread across the globe at lightning speed. Initially airborne, the virus turned infected individuals into zombies within a day, who would then bite others. Those bitten would turn into zombies within 10 minutes. In just 3 days, 90% of the global population had turned into foul-smelling zombies. By the 5th day, 95% were infected. It was on the 5th day that zombies breached my mansion, surrounding and devouring me. By then, humanity had no countermeasures in place, and human order had completely collapsed. So, after being reborn, I was very clear about one thing: in the apocalypse, you can't rely on anyone but yourself. I took a deep breath and glanced at the time again, July 20th, 2035, 10:25 a.m. With less than 11 days until the zombie outbreak and the onset of the apocalypse, just 10 days, 23 hours, and 55 minutes remaining, I needed to devise a plan and act immediately. After the zombies emerge, the three most essential items will be scarce: clean food, clean water, and a sturdy defense base. Without these, facing countless zombies means certain death. So, I quickly formulated a plan. From my previous life, I remembered that on the outskirts of City X, there was an abandoned prison for sale. Due to its exorbitant price and impracticality, it had been on the market for over a year without a buyer. In terms of sturdiness, few places could rival a prison. Without any hesitation, I contacted the seller. I spent 50 million to buy this abandoned prison. The seller looked at me as if I was a fool as I paid the money, received a bunch of keys, and registered various biometric codes. The seller probably thought I was an idiot. In the eyes of a normal person, only a nouveau riche fool would spend 50 million on such an impractical property, probably just for show. I didn't care about the seller's opinion. Let them laugh all they want. They'll see when the apocalypse comes. I meticulously inspected the prison. It was massive, with hundreds of cells capable of accommodating thousands of people. Besides that, there was a dining area spanning hundreds of square meters, various offices, laundry rooms, and thousands of square meters of recreational space. The prison walls, constructed from bricks, cement, and reinforced steel, were 6 meters high, topped with electric fences and various kinds of barbed defenses. With solid steel gates, the prison's defenses were elevated to an extremely high level. The vast space was more than enough to store decades worth of food and water. I was very satisfied. The 50 million was well spent. However, that was still not enough. After the apocalypse, the number of zombies would be overwhelming. Just in City X, there would be millions of zombies. The prison could fend off a few thousand zombies. But if tens of thousands or more were to attack, I would be done for. Thus, I needed to continue fortifying the prison. July 20th, 2035, 3:20 p.m. As I looked at the time on my phone, a sense of urgency washed over me. The time left for me was running out, and I needed to fortify the prison and purchase supplies as quickly as possible. After purchasing Pan's stone prison, I had 250 million left in my bank account. If a person earned 10,000 a month, it would take over 2,000 years to accumulate this much money. If one spent 10,000 a day, it would still last nearly 70 years. Such a vast fortune allowed me to use my imagination to equip my apocalypse fortress. I glanced at the time again, July 20th, 2035, 7:20 p.m. At 3:21:59 p.m., the countdown to the apocalypse showed just 10 days, 18 hours, 59 minutes, and 1 second remaining. An overwhelming sense of urgency rushed through my mind. I hesitated no more. Powering up my computer and logging onto a major online marketplace to begin a frantic shopping spree. Firstly, I purchased 3,000 tons of cement, 5,000 tons of granite, and 1,000 tons of steel bars. Given the massive volume of my order, the seller offered a substantial discount, totaling a cost of 5 million. My plan was to fortify the perimeter of Panrock Prison with an additional wall, 2 meters thick and 10 meters high, reinforced with steel bars, layered with granite, and solidified with poured cement. Furthermore, I intended to dig a trench between the two walls, 10 meters deep and 5 meters wide, filling it with 2 meters of cement and embedding steel blades throughout, then electrifying the entire setup. This defensive structure, provided I neither ventured recklessly outside nor opened the gates, should hold off tens of thousands of zombies. Right, some might say I'm afraid of death. And they would be right. I am, having survived an apocalypse once. Surrounded, torn apart, and devoured by countless zombies, the sheer terror and indescribable nightmare of that experience is something I never wish to endure again. Building such a massive fortification in so little time is a daunting, nearly impossible task. But then again, I have superpowers. With a grand gesture and another 5 million spent, I hired a team of 500 professionals, instructing them to complete the project within 5 days. Money talks, and the greasy, balding leader of the professional team bowed and scraped, eagerly agreeing to the tight deadline. In just half a day, the stone wall reached 5 meters high. I was satisfied with the progress of the work and felt reassured. Next, I started purchasing various necessities for survival. After the apocalypse begins, viruses will infect not just humans, but also animals, plants, and water sources. Thus, to survive the apocalypse, having a strong defensive fortress is not enough. Ample food and clean water are also essential. Looking at the 240 million lying in my bank account, I spared no expense. ordering massive quantities of food and water. I bought everything imaginable that grows in the ground: wheat, rice, peanuts, corn, sorghum, sweet potatoes, with each item ordered in quantities of 300,000 pounds, pork, lamb, chicken, duck. All imaginable meats were ordered, each in quantities of 100,000 pounds, fruits, each type ordered in quantities of 50,000 pounds, vegetables, each type ordered in quantities of 10,000 pounds. I also purchased countless quantities of fruit, crops, and plant seeds. To store all these items, I hired another professional team to dig 30 meters underground and construct a vast cold storage facility using cement, steel bars, and granite, employing the most advanced freezing and storage technology available. These items should be well preserved for decades, if not centuries. In addition to that, I went all out and cleared out a large supermarket, stocking up on all sorts of snacks, canned fruits, spicy strips, and nutritional drinks in abundance, enough to last me a few hundred years without any issues. As for water, I bought 100,000 bottles of water, 10,000 barrels of water, and various other beverages in large quantities, basically, any food and water I could think of. I bought in bulk. All in all, it cost me 50 million. You might think I've lost my mind, buying so much stuff. How could I possibly consume it all? Do you think I plan to be some kind of apocalyptic saint, rescuing others? Of course, I wouldn't engage in such foolish acts. The reason I purchased such a massive amount of food is linked to a secret that emerged on the third day of the apocalypse. This secret festers in my heart like a painful maggot, occasionally causing throbbing pain. Yet, it also feels like a vibrant seed that has fallen into the soil, taking root and sprouting, growing larger and engulfing me entirely. I'm terrified of the apocalypse, but at the same time, because of this secret, I'm also looking forward to it. Right now, my heart is in agony, suffering, but I know now is not the time to dwell on this secret. What I need to do is make adequate preparations before the apocalypse arrives, so I have the strength to unlock this mystery. The reinforcement of Panstone Prison is progressing methodically and swiftly. By noon the next day, the granite stacking was complete, and the steel framework was fully integrated, starting the process of pouring concrete into the walls. I must say, this team of 500 professionals is truly efficient, and I estimate the entire reinforcement of Panstone Prison's perimeter will be completed in 3 days. A worthwhile expenditure of 5 million, seeing the 10-meter-high, 2-meter-thick wall taking shape. I finally felt a bit of peace. The various foods and water were also being delivered rapidly. Large trucks lined up at the entrance of Panstone Prison, hundreds of them. Such a massive operation caught the attention of the authorities, who came to inspect. After spending hundreds of thousands to smooth over relations and offering a simple excuse, I managed to brush them off. The batches of food and water I brought in were temporarily stored in the spacious plaza of the prison, as the underground cold storage was still under construction and not yet available. The food and water piled up into small hills on the plaza, looking quite impressive. Jojo, wagging his tail and grinning, ran wildly around these hills, happily barking. My heart was filled with happiness. With these supplies, Jojo and I would never go hungry in the apocalypse and could live a life of endless ease. Having ample food and water alone is not enough. With the arrival of the apocalypse, the air became heavily polluted, and various bacteria and viruses spread everywhere, causing human immunity to plummet and making it easy to fall ill. Therefore, I spent 2 million to buy a pharmacy outright, using it as a cover to purchase a large quantity of various medications. In addition, I bought 300 solar panels and installed them across the entire roof of the prison. On the third day of the apocalypse, the power grid in City X collapsed, so if you wanted electricity, you had to rely on your own resources. Just having solar panels wasn't enough. In case there were several consecutive days without sunshine, I wouldn't have power, so I also bought 20 diesel generators and diesel fuel worth 1 million yuan as a contingency. Moreover, I installed hundreds of wind turbines on the roof of Panstone Prison, located in the suburbs and situated on higher ground. Panstone Prison had the advantage of being able to effectively utilize these turbines. Every day, there are strong winds, making it an ideal setting for wind turbines. In addition to this, I've replaced all doors and windows with bulletproof ones and installed various soundproofing devices. Zombies are extremely sensitive to noise. and these soundproofing measures effectively isolate and diminish any sounds that might attract them. After securing everything, I made another trip to the black market and spent $2 million to purchase a sufficient stockpile of firearms, grenades, gunpowder, and bulletproof vests. These items are normally prohibited, and I wouldn't even dare think about them under normal circumstances. However, with the apocalypse approaching, I reckoned that even if the authorities found out, it would likely be too late, so I had no reservations. Returning from the black market, I bought several hundred mobile phones and a dozen computers, loading them with various videos and novels. I also bought a massive collection of books from the bookstore. The apocalypse is monotonous, and I needed some intellectual nourishment to fill the dullness of life. 3 days later, after all these preparations were completed, the fortification around the prison perimeter was finished. The walls were incredibly thick and sturdy. I even tested them by ramming a large truck against them. The walls didn't budge, but the truck was totaled. I was satisfied as these robust walls could withstand tens of thousands of zombies. By connecting them to the electric grid, I was virtually invincible in the apocalypse. The various supplies I ordered also arrived over these 3 days, filling up the entire square and even the rooms, leaving no space to spare. Fortunately, the underground cold storage was completed just in time. I hired a crew to store 99% of the supplies there, leaving the remaining 1% in the prison's warehouse and kitchen for everyday use by myself and Jojo. I installed a 2-meter thick solid steel door for the cold storage entrance, equipped with triple security measures, facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, and a password. Only by unlocking all three could the cold storage be accessed. I wasn't being overly cautious. In an apocalypse, anything could happen, and I had to be prepared at all times. Finally, I purchased several hundred drones and cameras to monitor the conditions inside and outside the prison. Once everything was ready, I glanced at the time, July 30th, 2035, at 10:20 p.m. The apocalypse was set to unleash its fury in precisely 12 hours. To celebrate, or rather to cherish, these last beautiful 12 hours, I prepared a feast for myself and Jojo. We had roasted lamb leg, braised pork, clay pot chicken, cold bean curd, stir-fried eggs with green peppers, and a dog food salad, among other dishes, filling the entire table, not forgetting my favorite snow beer. Sitting in the spacious prison yard, enjoying the feast and sipping beer under the sparse stars, I was filled with emotions. This was likely the last peaceful and serene night. Tomorrow, not just City X, but the entire Earth would turn into a living hell. Bang! The next day, July 31st, 2035, at 10:20 a.m., I was abruptly awakened by a loud crash that sounded as if it tore through the sky, causing my ears to ring and my head to feel like it was about to explode. Shaking my head, it took a full minute before I regained clarity. Grabbing a high-definition telescope, I took the elevator up to the 50-meter-high observation tower. I had this lookout tower specially built to monitor the surroundings of Pan Rock Prison, mainly in anticipation of a secret that was soon to be revealed. Now, it seems to have come in handy. I raised my binoculars and looked towards the northwest, where thick smoke billowed, a sign of impact about 5 kilometers from my location, right at the site of a biochemical lab known for a virus leak. Through the binoculars, I could clearly see the reality before me. A helicopter had crashed into the biochemical lab, igniting fierce flames and leaving ruins in its wake. A rather gruesome scene. However, what worried me most was not the crash itself, but the aftermath. In my previous life, at this exact moment, the helicopter crash led to the release of the virus from the lab, triggering a zombie outbreak and the onset of an apocalyptic world. In this life, despite being better prepared, I still hoped to avert the apocalypse. Clutching the binoculars tightly, I observed every movement within the lab, my hands sweating from the tension. I prayed for a miracle, for the apocalypse to be averted, but contrary to my wishes, nothing changed. About a minute later, a group of scientists in white coats burst out of the lab, screaming in panic. Behind them, a dozen dismembered, grotesque zombies chased after them. No miracle occurred. The apocalypse arrived on schedule. Day 1 of the apocalypse outbreak. The virus was most ferocious at this time. Each infected zombie possessed primal ferocity, strength, speed, and agility far beyond that of any ordinary human, even capable of overpowering a tiger. This was why, in just 3 days, 90% of the world's population was infected and transformed into zombies. Unsurprisingly, the scientists in white coats who fled the lab didn't make it more than 20 meters before they were tackled and bitten to death by the pursuing zombies. 10 minutes later, these dead scientists eerily rose from the ground and sprinted towards the city center. Meanwhile, the virus continued to leak from the lab. 1 hour later, thousands in City X were infected. 2 hours later, tens of thousands in City X were infected. 5 hours later, City X was engulfed in chaos, with fires raging and buildings collapsing, and zombies roamed everywhere. With fewer and fewer humans in sight, I glanced at the time, July 31st, 2035, 3:20 p.m. The entire City X was completely overrun by the zombie virus, a veritable hell on Earth. I had been on the lookout tower for 5 hours, filled with an indescribable sense of sorrow, in my previous life. I had learned about these events and data through television news. This time, witnessing it firsthand, the feeling was incomparably different. Such horrors, you only truly understand once you've experienced them firsthand. Outside, limbs were scattered everywhere, blood nearly staining the entire City X red. Even having lived through an apocalypse before, the sight nearly made me vomit. City X had been completely overrun, and the survivors began desperately fleeing to the suburbs. Unsurprisingly, as expected, many survivors arrived at the gates of Pan Rock Prison. After all, I had heavily fortified it, making it hard not to notice. Hundreds of survivors rammed the gate with various vehicles, desperate to get in. However, the gate I reinforced was indestructible, able to withstand even tank shells, let alone a few cars. Unable to breach the gate, they tried to climb the walls. The 10-meter-high walls were difficult to scale. A few managed to climb using ropes but were electrocuted by the electric fence and turned into charred remains. The remaining survivors no longer dared to act recklessly. At that moment, someone spotted me on the watchtower and began using a megaphone to plead for my help. Some offered me 10 million if I let them in, others promised to serve me in any capacity I required. Some attractive women and even a few robust men offered themselves to satisfy all my desires. While I was internally speechless, my face remained expressionless as I raised my sniper rifle and aimed at the survivors. Leave, or die. In this apocalypse, I had no intentions of playing the savior. From past experiences, I knew the consequences of being merciful. If I hadn't tried to save that person, I wouldn't have died so soon, nor would I have discovered that secret. Thinking of that secret filled me with excitement. The survivors didn't believe I would shoot and started hurling abuses and threats. Bang! Without hesitation, I pulled the trigger, blowing the head off one of the survivors. You have 3 seconds to leave. After that, I will commence killing, I declared sternly. Finally, fear struck the remaining survivors, and they fled in terror. However, just a few hundred meters out, thousands of zombies emerged from all directions, devouring the survivors without exception. The zombies also noticed me on the watchtower and began charging, hitting the gates and the walls. Some climbed the walls but were incinerated by the electric fence. At that moment, I was grateful for the foresight of building the 10-meter-high wall, which now protected me from becoming zombie food. After several hours, thousands of zombies attacked but failed to damage my walls. Eventually, attracted by other fleeing survivors, they moved away from Pan Rock Prison. As night fell, I surveyed the area using cameras and drones. About 100 zombies aimlessly roamed outside the walls, posing no threat to my base. So, I let down my guard, set up a barbecue on the plaza, and enjoyed a whole roasted lamb. By 10 p.m., the fires in City X burned brighter, but the cries for help grew fewer and even the TV news reporting the latest on the zombie infection turned to static. I knew then that City X had likely fallen completely, with over 90% of the population turned into zombies. Without surprise, the virus would have spread to nearby cities by tomorrow, infecting the entire Asian continent, and by the day after, the whole world would succumb. Of course, these were matters beyond my control. Once the virus spread, it was a state of uncontrollable chaos where everyone seemed doomed to face calamity. Of course, that didn't include me. At that moment, I was lounging on the sofa, gnawing on a lamb leg, tipsy from snowflake beer, and oddly enjoying the harrowing wails of zombies outside. August 1st, 2035, 9 a.m., I woke up groggy and climbed back to the lookout tower, observing the situation outside through a telescope and drones. By then, the fires in City X had gradually died down. Occasionally, a few survivors could be seen on the streets, but their numbers were negligible. The city was overrun with groups of roaming zombies. City X had truly turned into a hell on earth, for others perhaps, but for me, was it almost like paradise. Not feeling hungry in the morning, I simply made some preserved egg and lean pork congee and ate 2 pork and scallion buns. Jojo, on the other hand, had a great appetite. Ever since enjoying a roasted whole lamb feast with me the previous night, he had lost interest in his regular dog food and began crazily devouring various meats. If denied, he would bare his teeth, even throw tantrums on the ground. I had enough stored meat that even if I was alone, I couldn't possibly finish it in 10,000 years, so it didn't matter. Whatever Jojo wanted to eat, I let him, indulging him. He gnawed on half a lamb leg early in the morning, looking at Jojo with his belly swollen, lying on the ground content as if he just stepped out of a bath. I couldn't help but think that being my dog in this apocalypse wasn't too bad. The day passed uneventfully. For lunch and dinner, I had hearty meals, and Jojo feasted as well. After 2 days of feasting, Jojo's look of disdain was replaced with one of admiration, even occasionally nuzzling my toes like a docile cat. Could it be that with the apocalypse, his intelligence had mutated, learning to please me? This wasn't his usual style. Finally, I shamelessly attributed Jojo's change to my handsome looks and unique charisma. Besides meal times, I spent an hour playing with Jojo, and the rest of my time immersed in video games and movies. Having grown up an orphan and struggled through life, I had never experienced such comfort and enjoyment. Life like this was truly beautiful. 11:20 p.m. The fires in City X had completely extinguished, and no more survivors were on the streets. The internet, electricity, and water supply were cut off. This was a whole day earlier than in my past life. Could it be because my rebirth had some impact on this world, speeding up everything? Could that secret also emerge sooner? This sudden change gripped my heart. I thought I had adjusted well, made all the preparations, and could face that secret without disturbance. But when the time came, I realized I was wrong. A trace of gloom still lingered in my heart. The secret was related to a painful part of my past, and if possible, I wished it would never happen. I took the elevator up to the observation deck and observed the outside situation through a high-powered, clear telescope. As an astronomy enthusiast, in my past life, after winning the lottery, I purchased this high-powered telescope. When the apocalypse arrived, it helped me avoid several waves of zombies and observe the situation in City X. Without it, I might have perished on the first day of the apocalypse. At this moment, standing on the observation deck and looking at the dark City X, I compared it with my memories from the past life and realized that the timeline had indeed moved forward. Everything was happening a day earlier, exactly 24 hours ahead. I took out my phone and glanced at the time, 11:25 p.m. In my past life, on August 2nd, 2035, at 11:50 p.m., she appeared, and I saved her, which led to the unveiling of that secret, the secret that eventually led to my death. In this life, with the apocalypse's timeline advanced by 24 hours, she would appear in another 25 minutes. Taking a deep breath, I calmed myself down and stopped dwelling on the painful past. At 11:30 p.m., I took the elevator down from the observation deck and began to check the preparations I had made earlier. By 11:45 p.m., I had completed all the checks. Everything was normal, and I was confident that I had everything under control. Carrying 2 sniper rifles, I took the elevator back up to the observation deck. At 11:50 p.m., as I reached the observation deck, at that very moment, a long-lost yet familiar whistle sounded outside the rock prison. Looking towards the sound, illuminated by the prison's perimeter floodlights, I saw a stunningly beautiful young woman with a fiery figure standing at the entrance of Rock Prison, her eyes fixed on me. My heart trembled slightly. It was her. The inevitable had finally arrived. I grew up an orphan, raised in an orphanage. As a child, without parents or relatives, I endured humiliation at school, and as I grew older, endured disdain due to poverty. Only Delilah never despised me. I still remember our first encounter when I was 8 years old. It was a snowy, windy winter noon, and I was being humiliated by a group of bullies at school, being spat on. When she appeared just in time, drove the bullies away, and saved me. From then on, we became best friends, inseparable, attending the same elementary, middle, high school, and university, and even after graduating, we met up every now and then. In my heart, although Jojo was my only relative, Delilah held a place even higher than Jojo. I trusted her unconditionally and shared everything I had with her, but in the end, I discovered that it was all just a meticulously crafted conspiracy, a conspiracy that had been laid out since the moment we met. Her closeness and protection were all because of something on me, in my body. There is something she needs, in my previous life. The reason I was besieged and devoured by zombies on the 5th day was because she orchestrated it. The whistle sounded again as I was lost in thought, a wooden whistle, with a clear call of a cuckoo. This was a unique method of communication between me and Delilah. We had agreed that if we encountered danger and couldn't speak, we would use this wooden whistle to communicate or call for help. Of course, it was Delilah who came up with this idea when we first met when I was 8 years old. In my past life, I never doubted her. I thought it was a wonderful arrangement until I was devoured by the zombies. Only then did I realize that the whistle was also part of Delilah's scheme. Zombies in the apocalypse are extremely sensitive to sounds, particularly human voices, but curiously, they're indifferent to the sound of a cuckoo. That's why Delilah used the cuckoo whistle to communicate with me. She knew about the apocalypse long before it happened. In fact, she might even be the creator of this apocalyptic disaster. On the watchtower, Jojo barked furiously at Delilah. This kind of barking signified extreme alertness, occurring only when facing danger or enemies. Jojo was clever. It had long seen through Delilah's true nature, but in my past life, I was completely oblivious and naively trusted her. But that was in my past life. Delilah would never have dreamed that I would be reborn and return. My thoughts flew back from the distant past, and the complex emotions in my heart cleared. I wore an excited expression, much like the one Delilah had when she came to find me at the villa after the apocalypse had erupted. Delilah is very smart, with strong anti-surveillance skills. Any slight abnormality could tip her off. While she hunted me, wasn't I also hunting her? Therefore, before she walked into the trap I had carefully set, I had to control my emotions and not fail at the last moment. The secrets she held were crucial to me. With those secrets, I might not just survive in this prison. I could perhaps even end this apocalyptic disaster. I pressed the remote control button, and the first gate of Panstone Prison opened. As expected, Delilah stood outside observing for a long time, making sure it was safe before she entered. Fortunately, I had considered this and designed a concealed trap. Otherwise, Delilah would have surely discovered it by now. Watching Delilah step closer to my trap, I felt a rush of excitement about my impending success. In my past life, you set a trap for me. And in this life, I want you to taste what it's like to be ensnared by someone else's designs. However, just as Delilah was about to step into my trap, she suddenly halted and swiftly pulled a sniper rifle from her black handbag, aiming it at me. Delilah fired quickly, and before I could even raise my gun, she had already pulled the trigger, sending a bullet speeding towards me. This woman was indeed shrewd and alert. I saw a smug smile curl at the corner of her mouth. Seemingly proud of having seen through my scheme, she thought she had me completely figured out. But how could I have not anticipated this? I had already installed bulletproof glass on the watchtower, so transparent and close that it's difficult to detect. Even Delilah wouldn't have noticed it. The bullet hit the bulletproof glass and was deflected without leaving a single mark, let alone harming me. Delilah was stunned. She clearly hadn't expected this, with a strategy so meticulously laid out. She spun around without a hint of hesitation and dashed towards the exit. Yet, how could I let the prey that was already in my grasp escape so easily? With a creaking noise, I pressed the remote control in my hand once more. The 2-meter-thick gate thundered down, locking into place. Simultaneously, I hit another button, and a net of iron chains fell from above, pinning Delilah tightly to the ground, rendering her completely immobile. Bang, 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 bang. I fired 4 shots in succession, shattering Delilah's limbs. During this time, I had been rigorously practicing my shooting every day at the indoor range in Panstone Prison, which greatly improved my accuracy. Now, Delilah posed no threat to me whatsoever. I came down from the watchtower, opened the second massive gate of Panstone Prison, and walked towards her. I had no choice. This woman's scheming was far too profound, and I had to be extremely cautious. Hand over the potion, and I can leave your body intact, allowing you a dignified death, I said coldly, looking at Delilah, who lay bloodied and gasping for breath within the net of chains like a dying dog. By now, facing this woman again, I managed to remain completely unemotional. Delilah's expression froze, her eyes showing utter disbelief. How did you know? People who fail don't have the right to ask questions. Hand over the potion, or I'll throw you out to the zombies. You know better than anyone just how vicious they are outside. Even though Delilah was now completely at my mercy, I would not reveal to her that I had been reborn. I suspected that this woman must have had accomplices, otherwise, how could an 8-year-old girl orchestrate such an enormous and shocking plan and manage it for 15 years, if she had accomplices? It was highly likely she carried a communication device, therefore, I couldn't expose my secret of rebirth. Rebirth was too fantastical. If the people behind Delilah knew, they would spare no effort to control me immediately. This S-class defensive prison might hold off thousands of zombies but not necessarily them, but if I could secure the potion from Delilah before her accomplices arrived, I might have a chance to turn the tide. Delilah, hearing my threat, turned deathly pale. Fear flashing in her eyes. So, this woman could feel fear too. You have 3 seconds. 3. I started counting, not intending to waste too much time with her, even if she didn't speak. I knew where the potion was. The last time, after obtaining my blood and pushing me into a horde of zombies, I had seen her pull the potion from a hidden pocket in her chest. I merely wanted her to hand it over herself to allow her a dignified death. After all, we had spent 15 years together. And even though she was just a friend I thought I deeply knew, I didn't want to torture her too cruelly. You win, it's in the pocket on my chest. As I reached the count of 2, Delilah conceded. I removed the chain net and retrieved a bottle of red liquid potion from the hidden pocket on her chest. I'm curious, how did you know that my blood could perfectly merge with this potion, producing the ability to control zombies? As I pocketed the liquid potion, I voiced the long-standing doubt in my mind. That's simple. Our biochemical lab had developed the antidote and matched it with the blood of people nationwide before studying the zombie virus. Only your blood met the criteria, and after merging with the X potion, not only could it control zombies, it could also. At this point, Delilah's face changed, and she suddenly stopped. Are you trying to trick me? I nodded with satisfaction. Indeed, you had accomplices, he said. You're smarter than I thought. I've lost, and lost thoroughly. Just finish it quickly. Delilah resignedly closed her eyes. There's one more thing. What effect does the X potion have after it's fused with my blood? Delilah suddenly opened her eyes and burst into a twisted laugh. I thought you knew everything. It turns out you don't know the ultimate purpose of the X potion. Huh, I haven't completely lost after all. I quietly watched Delilah's manic laughter, making no move. Why bother with a dying person? Let her laugh. Cherish these final moments. After laughing for about a minute, Delilah's expression suddenly turned sorrowful. I don't actually know the ultimate purpose of the X potion either. These years, I've just been a puppet, acting on orders, knowing very little. Did you know, I've always considered you my best friend, but everything I did was out of my control. They injected me with poison. If I hadn't done as they said, I would have died long ago. I'm not saying this to ask for your forgiveness. After all, I deceived you and even tried to harm you, but saying this out loud makes me feel a bit better. It feels good to be free of secrets. I have a remote imaging device on me. They know everything that's happening here. In 3 days, they will come. Their capabilities are beyond your imagination. Staying here means certain death for you. Believe me, get as far away as you can. After these words, Delilah gave a tragic smile and bit her tongue. Committing suicide. I wasn't surprised by her suicide. It was perhaps the most dignified way for her to die. I knew that Delilah's last words were sincere, and I felt sad for her, but not pity. Even if she hadn't killed herself, I wouldn't have spared her. We were mortal enemies after all. The people behind Delilah seemed terrifying, giving me a strong sense of crisis. However, I had no intention of leaving my fortress, in a world overrun by zombies. With my current abilities, stepping outside meant certain death. The fortress was the safest place. Moreover, I might not die. If I could merge with the X potion and control the zombies, along with my prior preparations and its unknown ultimate effects, I still had a chance to win. I found the remote imaging device on Delilah, destroyed it, and disposed of her body. I then relocked the prison gates and activated the highest level of defense, sitting back down on the sofa in the prison courtyard. I didn't rush to merge with the X potion. Instead, I opened a bottle of snow beer and downed it in one gulp. This wasn't just drinking beer, it was also settling a grudge, the grudge between me and Delilah. Woof woof woof. Jojo seemed to sense my somber mood and made a sympathetic noise, rubbing against my leg. I was touched. In this world, there was still a hint of warmth for me, even if it was just from a dog. But just as I was about to pet Jojo, returning a bit of tenderness, the dog impatiently dodged my hand, jumped onto the table, and voraciously started devouring a lamb leg. Damn it, it turned out this dog wasn't trying to comfort me at all. I was hungry and craving meat. In a swift move, I snatched the lamb leg from Jojo's mouth, grabbed it by the neck, and threw it into a cell for solitary confinement. I wasn't happy, and yet it wanted to eat meat. Dream on. After dealing with Jojo, I returned to my own room. My room was large, with all kinds of facilities. And I even had a swimming pool installed. Besides the luxurious amenities, this room was also the most defensively secure place in Rock Prison, much stronger than my underground cold storage. After all, it was where I slept, so it absolutely had to be reliable. I activated the strongest defense before taking out the X potion. After all, I didn't know what would happen when I mixed the X potion, so I engaged the highest defense just in case. The method to merge with the X potion was simple. Open the lid and drink it directly. As I opened the lid, a strange fragrance wafted out, intoxicating me, and without a moment's hesitation, I drank it down and sat on the genuine leather sofa, waiting for the fusion to occur. At 18 minutes and 32 seconds after drinking the X potion, I finally felt something unusual. My body started to heat up, my blood began to boil, and my brain became clearer, enabling me to think about things I had never considered before. At 30 minutes and 57 seconds after drinking the X potion, the unusual sensation disappeared, and the fusion was successful. I felt an unprecedented clarity in my brain, and it seemed like my IQ had significantly increased. I took out some IQ test questions that I had bought at the supermarket along with the items there. A few minutes later, the results showed that my IQ had reached a staggering 280, considering that Einstein's IQ was only 160 and Da Vinci's was around 230, my 280 was remarkable. This was just a rough, unprofessional estimate, but personally, I felt my IQ could be even higher. Moreover, I discovered that my strength and speed had also greatly increased. I stepped out of my room, went to the plaza, and effortlessly lifted a granite table weighing over 800 pounds. I also tested my speed, running 100 meters in just 9 seconds, at 8:92 seconds, breaking the human record limit. It was shocking. Even though I knew the X potion would bring some unexpected changes, the extent of these changes was beyond my expectations and seemed incredible. Moreover, these were just the basic changes brought by the X potion. Its greater effect was supposed to be the telekinetic control of zombies. Could it be that I could now control zombies with my mind? Climbing up to the watchtower, I looked at a zombie outside the fence and issued a command, but the zombie showed no reaction. I tried with another zombie, still no response. After several attempts with more than a dozen zombies, all were the same, I concluded that there must be a distance requirement for telekinetic control of zombies. It seemed necessary to get closer to the zombies, so I slaughtered a live sheep, placed the bloody meat between the first and second gates of Rock Prison, and made a lot of noise. Soon, sounds of zombies growling and banging on the gate could be heard from outside the first gate. It seemed like there were dozens of them. I retreated to the second gate, opened the first gate, and a swarm of zombies clawed their way in, rushing towards the bloody meat and savagely tearing it apart. Even having experienced an apocalypse before, witnessing such a scene up close still made my flesh crawl. Taking a deep breath to calm my nerves, I began trying to control a zombie from 100 meters away using telekinesis, but it didn't work. 99 meters, still no luck. 98 meters, still nothing. No. After 20 attempts, I finally succeeded in controlling a zombie with my mind. 80 meters is the maximum distance at which I can control a zombie telepathically. I commanded the zombie to perform various actions, and it complied without resistance, even going so far as to kill another zombie upon my order. This confirmed my conclusion. I can fully control a zombie with my mind and make it do anything I want. Next, I tried to control 2 zombies, and it was possible. 3, also possible. 4, possible. After 50 attempts, I realized that I could no longer increase the number. The maximum number of zombies I could control at one time was 50. Would reducing the distance allow me to control more zombies? I started experimenting again. 79 meters, still only 50 zombies. 78 meters, still 50 zombies. Even when I approached the second gate, only 5 meters away, I could still only control 50 zombies. It seems that the number of zombies I can control is not related to the distance. However, I wasn't disappointed. Controlling 50 zombies from a distance of 80 meters far exceeded my expectations. With this ability, combined with my extraordinarily high intelligence, formidable strength, and superhuman speed, my chances of survival are still very high, even without this fortress. And I should be able to live quite comfortably, but the danger now facing me is not the zombies, but the people behind Delilah. Delilah mentioned that the people behind her are terrifying and beyond my ability to confront. This statement is rich in meaning, suggesting not only that my fortress cannot stop these people but also that even after merging with the X serum, I am no match for them. Therefore, I need to become stronger and make more thorough preparations. As for how to become stronger, I already have an idea. 20. In my previous life, as I was surrounded by zombies and nearing death, I vaguely heard Delilah say, after merging the X serum with my blood, one's speed, strength, and ability to control zombies will greatly increase. The blood itself can be enhanced to a higher limit, and the enhancement method is quite peculiar. It involves drinking nutrient lines, and the more you drink, the greater the enhancement. This is why I've stored a large amount of nutrient lines. I don't know which idiotic scientist came up with this method of enhancement, but this method certainly makes my path to improvement incredibly convenient, though it doesn't change my opinion that it's a foolish idea. I took out a box of nutrient lines, opened a bottle, and drank it all at once. Indeed, my speed and strength noticeably increased. I tried controlling the zombies again and found that the distance had increased to 90 meters and the number of zombies I could control had risen to 100. A single bottle of nutrient line resulted in such a significant improvement. I was pleasantly surprised and quickly drank another bottle, extending my control distance to 100 meters and the number of zombies to 150. The growth was exponential. After some thought, having merged with the X serum, my appetite had also increased, several times over the usual. 3 days was enough time for me to consume 200 bottles of nutrient lines. 200 bottles would ultimately allow me to control zombies from a distance of 20-80 meters and manage a total of 10-50 zombies. With such a level of control, even if the people behind Delilah are extraordinarily powerful, I could easily eliminate them. However, my imagination was too optimistic. By the time I drank the 10th bottle, the effect significantly diminished. Ultimately, over 3 days, I actually consumed 200 bottles of Nutrient Express. However, my control over the zombies extended only up to 300 meters in distance and 500 in number, which was far less than I had anticipated. With this level of control, not to mention eliminating the people behind Delilah, it would be hard even to block them. Glancing at the time, with less than 5 hours until the arrival of Delilah's backers, a sense of unprecedented crisis hit me. I knew I could no longer put all my chips on enhancing my zombie control and personal strength. I needed to make a more comprehensive deployment. At 7:30 p.m., 4.5 hours remained until the arrival of Delilah's backers. With time pressing, I dared not delay and began my urgent preparations. I purchased a large amount of firearms, explosives, and grenades on the black market. I used half of the explosives to set up a trap outside the first gate of Panstone Prison, rigged to explode upon being stepped on by Delilah's people. If it didn't explode on its own, I could still detonate it remotely. I buried the rest of the explosives between the first and second gates. Additionally, I set up as many traps as possible in the prison yard, strung a dense network of electrified wire, and established several concealed sniper positions, deploying sniper rifles in advance. Finally, I mounted machine guns both outside and inside my bedroom. This setup, along with the 500 zombies, should be sufficient to handle Delilah's people, right? Just after I finished all the preparations, right at midnight, a loud explosion sounded outside the gate. Delilah's people had arrived. I took Jojo up to the watchtower, and at first glance, I was stunned. No wonder Delilah said her backers were not someone I could handle. They had arrived in tanks, not just ordinary tanks, but ones several times larger than normal, covered in sharp spikes and equipped with cannon barrels much thicker than usual. I counted 5 tanks in total, bombarding my first perimeter wall with shells. Faced with such tanks, the explosives I planted were utterly useless. All the explosives detonated, but not even a single tank tread was damaged, and my first perimeter wall was effortlessly breached. The tanks, unstoppable in their momentum, began to ram the second wall. My 500 controlled zombies were wiped out in no time. All of this happened in just 2 minutes. Sweat poured down my forehead. Facing these monstrous tanks, all my preparations turned out to be paper tigers, causing no damage to the enemy. Without hesitation, and as quickly as possible, I took Jojo down from the watchtower and ran towards my room, my strongest fortress, which might be the only place that could stop them. As I descended from the watchtower, a thunderous noise erupted in the sky. I looked up to see a helicopter, equipped with a machine gun. The person behind the machine gun shouted at me, "Surrender, or die, surrender." That was absolutely impossible. I knew falling into their hands meant a fate worse than death, so I ignored the shouts from the helicopter, sprinting towards my strongest fortress with the enhanced speed and sensory abilities from the 200 bottles of Nutrient Express, narrowly escaping the machine gun fire and taking refuge in my most fortified stronghold. Just as I reached this sanctuary, the second gate was also breached by the 5 tanks. With a thunderous collapse, 5 tanks charged forward aggressively, knocking down numerous cells and completely encircling my strongest fortress. "You have 5 minutes to think it over. If you don't come out in 5 minutes, we'll blast you to smithereens." Lamb, pork, beer, Oreos, and octopus balls. What's this? Cheesecake. Damn. How did this guy stock up so much? Is he fleeing or on vacation? Damn it. He eats better than us. He's really too arrogant. Kill him. We must kill him. Various curses came from outside. As I listened nervously inside, I couldn't help but find it amusing. These people were so short-sighted. What was this fuss about? These supplies were just 1% of what I had stored. I have 99% more in my underground cold storage. If they saw what I have down there, wouldn't they want to hack me to pieces? The 5 minutes passed quickly, and they cursed non-stop throughout. 5 minutes are up. You're looking for death by not taking the face given to you. Now, let our strongest artillery strike. Through the glass of my strongest fortress, I saw a bald man in one of the tanks, a middle-aged man with a face full of flesh, looking like a thoroughly despicable villain. Bang, bang, bang. Under the orders of the bald middle-aged man, powerful shells bombarded my strongest fortress, attempting to shatter it. Was I really doomed to die here? Of course not. In fact, from the day of my rebirth, I had anticipated the worst-case scenario, which was what was happening now. Thus, I had installed rebound devices on the walls and doors of my strongest fortress beforehand. This level of artillery couldn't harm my strongest fortress. Moreover, I had buried extremely powerful super bombs around the fortress. These powerful super bombs needed time to activate, and the 5 minutes I spent hiding in the fortress were used to activate them. Now that the super bombs were activated, it was time for me to strike back. Boom, boom, boom. As the bald middle-aged man and others bombarded my fortress, I pressed the control button. 8 super bombs exploded simultaneously outside, unleashing a terrifying energy that flattened dozens of prison cells in an instant, sending up clouds of dust. 5 tanks were instantly destroyed, and almost all the people inside were killed in a gruesome scene I couldn't bear to describe. Only the bald middle-aged man was left, his legs blown off, barely clinging to life. As for the planes in the sky, seeing my formidable counterattack, they didn't dare to shoot at me anymore and flew away at top speed. Actually, I had no means to strike back any further. Destroying 5 super tanks was the extent of my capabilities, so I could only watch the plane flee. I opened the door and walked out of the strongest fortress, approaching the bald middle-aged man. How is this possible? How could you have such strong counterattack capabilities? Everything about you was under our surveillance, and 3 billion wouldn't be enough for this level of equipment, the bald middle-aged man said, his face full of horror and fear. I scoffed mockingly. With your intelligence, you thought you could outsmart me. Didn't you know about something called installment payments? Indeed, from the beginning, I had bought various things mostly on installment payments. Although I only had 3 billion, I had turned the Panstone prison into a fortress worth 10 billion, spending 5 billion on this strongest fortress alone. In a post-apocalyptic world, not having to repay installments is foolish. Tell me, what is the ultimate effect of the X serum? Speak, and I can make your death more comfortable. You want to know the ultimate effect of the X serum? You think you're worthy? I would never tell you, even if it means my death. The bald middle-aged man said defiantly. Then I will grant your wish. I took out a hammer and a knife. Seeing this, the bald middle-aged man turned pale with fear. What are you going to do? With a menacing grin, I said, I'm not going to kill you right away. First, I'll break every bone in your body, then I'll skin you alive. Don't worry, I won't let you die. After I'm done, you'll be thrown into a horde of zombies. No, please no. The bald middle-aged man, his face ghostly pale and body trembling, finally broke down. I'll tell you, the ultimate effect of the X serum is, bang. Just as the bald middle-aged man was about to reveal the ultimate effect of the X serum, a bullet whistled through the air. piercing his head and splattering his brains all over my face. Damn it, looking at the bald man, who died with his eyes still open, a chill ran down my spine, my forehead turned cold, and sweat broke out. The shot was sudden. I was completely unprepared. Had it been aimed at me, I would have been dead without a doubt. At the same time, I was filled with rage. I was on the verge of discovering the ultimate effect of the X serum, only for the bald man to be killed in an instant. All efforts wasted. I picked up the binoculars and looked in the direction from which the bullet had come, about 800 meters away. On the rooftop of a 30-story building, a person in black was boarding a helicopter. The sniper rifle in their hand was unmistakable. They were the one who had shot the bald man. As the person in black was about to enter the helicopter, they turned and gave me a chilling smile. My whole body shuddered, and my scalp tingled. Delilah, 25. This person in black looked exactly like Delilah. I thought I was hallucinating and rubbed my eyes vigorously. Looking again confirmed it. It was indeed Delilah. How is this possible? I couldn't help but exclaim, filled with disbelief. Delilah had clearly bitten her tongue and committed suicide right before my eyes, and I had burned her body to ashes. How could she possibly still be alive? No, it can't be Delilah. It must be her twin sister, I reasoned, because it's impossible for someone to come back from the dead. Don't you want to know the ultimate effect of the X serum? Come to Z Biochemical Lab within 24 hours, the voice continued. If you don't come, you'll turn into a zombie within the next 24 hours. Just then, a woman's voice came from the body of the bald middle-aged man. Remote imaging device. Sure enough, after searching, I found a remote imaging device on the bald man's body, displaying the image of the person on the helicopter. This woman, although identical to Delilah in appearance, had a completely different voice, filled with malice like that of a venomous snake, confirming my suspicion that she was not Delilah. I sneered, trying to lure me out to kill me. Do you think I'm a fool? I didn't know the details of this woman, but her ability to kill the bald man right in front of me without me noticing showed she was not to be underestimated. Only a fool would leave his fortress to meet her. The woman's sinister voice continued, when you drank the nutrient line, did you feel dizzy, with a throbbing pain, even intermittent stabbing? How did you know? My heart sank. Indeed, I had felt that way when I drank the nutrient line, but I had simply thought it was a normal reaction to the power enhancement. Now, it seemed it was not so simple. The woman sneered. How do I know? Because I developed the X serum. After your blood mixed with the X serum, the nutrient line could indeed enhance your abilities quickly, but there's also a side effect. After you consume more than 10 bottles of the nutrient line, this side effect will start to manifest. If it's not addressed within the next 24 hours, you will turn into a zombie. I didn't know how to respond. I had previously mocked whoever the foolish scientist was that had developed such a bizarre method of enhancement. At this moment, I can only feel like I'm the foolish one. Indeed, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Anything gained without effort comes at a terrible cost. The woman didn't say much more. She disconnected the remote link and left in the helicopter, and I, left with no real choice, seemed to be led by the nose by her. Should I go? If I don't go, there's a good chance I'll turn into a zombie within 24 hours. If I do go, there might still be a glimmer of hope. I still doubted the truth of what the woman had said, but I couldn't take the risk, even with just a 1 in 10,000 chance. If I gambled wrong, I'd become a zombie. I've come back to life and made it this far. I don't want to turn into a zombie again, so I decided to go. Before setting out, I made extensive preparations. When I bought the Panrock prison, the seller included an armored vehicle. I modified it, adding half-meter thick steel plates all around, including the chassis, and equipped it with an electrified grid. I also stocked the armored vehicle with a dozen guns, including pistols, machine guns, and sniper rifles. I put on 3 layers of bulletproof vests, a gas mask, and filled the back seat with food and water. I also brought along Jojo, as in this apocalyptic world overrun by zombies. Without me, he probably wouldn't survive another day since zombies attack animals too. After these preparations, I took control of 500 zombies and drove towards the Z Biochemical Lab. The Z Biochemical Lab is where the plane crash led to the leak of the zombie virus, causing the apocalypse. It's only 5 kilometers away from Panrock Prison. I drove the armored vehicle surrounded by 500 zombies, using their stench to mask our scent. Even so, my progress was slow. I only covered 2 kilometers in an hour because so many zombies were attracted by the noise, especially with the 500 I was controlling. whenever zombies approached, I had to stop and wait for them to disperse before continuing. An hour later, I had covered 4 kilometers. With just one more to go to reach the Z biochemical lab, at that moment, there was a sudden disturbance among the zombies ahead. Even Jojo became alert and started barking anxiously. What's going on? My heart sank, not knowing what was happening. In this apocalyptic world, anything could happen, but such sudden, unknown events filled me with dread. I tried to push forward using my telekinesis to control the zombies, but they no longer obeyed my commands, breaking free from my control. What in the world is happening? I panicked and took out my binoculars to look ahead. I saw all the zombies gathering around a massive zombie, a 5-meter-long mutated rat, now dead and starting to decompose. A grape-sized, crimson crystal was partially visible in the abdomen of the mutated rat. I had a feeling that this crimson crystal was no ordinary thing, but with 500 zombies out of my control, I dared not approach. Moreover, they blocked the only path forward, leaving me incredibly frustrated. Just as I was pondering how to break through the situation, Jojo skillfully opened the car door and jumped out. "Come back," I shouted loudly, trying to stop him, but it was too late. Jojo had already leaped out. I watched as Jojo, with incredible speed, charged into the crowd of zombies heading straight for the mutant rat. I thought it was all over, that I was about to lose the only family I had left in this world. My heart was filled with sorrow. Just when I thought Jojo would be torn to pieces by the zombies, I realized that the zombies weren't attacking him. Instead, all the zombies gathered around the mutant rat, frantically devouring its flesh and blood. Jojo, agile as ever, quickly squeezed to the front of the mutant rat, grabbed a crimson crystal, and ran back to the car at high speed, tossing the crystal in front of me. Everything happened so quickly that I hadn't even come to my senses yet. What on earth is this thing? Without the time to dwell on Jojo's recklessness, I took the crimson crystal in my hand and examined it closely. This thing was definitely not ordinary. The reason the mutant rat had grown to 5 meters long must be because of it. After observing for a long time without figuring out exactly what it was, suddenly, I saw that the zombies that had devoured the mutant rat were undergoing mutations. They were visibly becoming stronger, and some even began to show basic signs of consciousness. This thing must be the key to the mutant rat's mutation. Could it also counteract the side effects the nutrient line has caused me? A wildly crazy idea suddenly popped into my head. 28. Maybe it could. After hesitating for a few minutes, I decided to swallow the crimson crystal, although I was prepared. I stood no chance against the woman in black. After all, if what she said was true and the side effects of the nutrient line would turn me into a zombie, and she controlled the antidote, then I was like a fish on the chopping block, completely at her mercy. It seemed I had no other choice but to take a gamble. With gritted teeth, I swallowed the crimson crystal. The moment it went down, a warm flow instantly spread throughout my body, finally reaching my brain, which had been somewhat blurry and painful. It cleared up instantly, and I knew that the side effects had been neutralized. It felt like a dream. I could hardly believe that I had countered the side effects in such a manner. As I neutralized the side effects, my body also underwent a significant enhancement. I felt that my physical strength had increased at least tenfold. I regained control of 500 zombies, after devouring the flesh and blood of the mutant rat. These zombies had transformed remarkably. Not only did they possess basic consciousness, but their bodies had also become much more robust. I estimated they could match up to 2,000 ordinary zombies. I continued towards the Z biochemical laboratory and arrived at its entrance half an hour later. Creak, the door of the Z biochemical laboratory opened, and a woman's voice came from the camera. "Leave the zombies outside, only you may enter, otherwise, you can forget about getting the antidote." It seemed the woman didn't know that I had already neutralized my side effects, so I decided to play along, making a show of compliance as I obediently walked into the Z biochemical laboratory. As soon as I walked in, I was locked in an iron cage. Each bar of the cage was as thick as an arm. The cage, equipped with pulleys, moved automatically and finally reached the lowest level of the Z biochemical laboratory, 58 floors underground. Here, I was met with a shocking sight. Countless giant embryonic tissues, each containing a woman who looked exactly like Delilah, clones. It seemed unlikely that the technology of 2035 had reached this stage, but considering the manufactured biochemical virus, I was somewhat reassured. At that moment, the woman finally came out and looked at me, saying, "Long time no see." "Not that long, it's only been 3 days." I looked at her and finally understood everything. This woman was Delilah. And the one who had committed suicide in front of me was merely Delilah's clone, a substitute. The Delilah before me was definitely not just 23 years old, she must be much older. After all, creating clones and halting aging seemed perfectly normal for her. Offer your blood, and I will give you the antidote. Become my slave, and together we will rule the world. Delilah's expression was icy as she revealed her grand ambition with a sinister tone. Agreed. But I want to know the ultimate secret of the X serum. I voiced the question that had long lingered in my mind, thinking she had me completely under her control and without any reservations left. Delilah disclosed, the ultimate secret of the X serum is that once fused with your blood, it can not only control zombies but also neutralize the zombie virus. However, I have not yet fully deciphered the genetic sequence needed to neutralize the virus. Enough talk, let's draw some blood. Delilah's patience seemed to be running thin as she prepared to extract my blood. Catching you was no easy task. It drained my strongest resources, so I really need to draw extra blood for my research. Heh, really, you might be disappointed then. I scoffed coldly, tore open the steel cage with my bare hands, and quickly subdued Delilah. Delilah, shocked and disbelieving, exclaimed, how is this possible? How could you evolve so quickly to tear apart a cage made of refined steel with your bare hands? It seemed Delilah was unaware of the zombie mutation. I didn't bother with further talk and said, hand over your research, and I might let you keep your body intact. Heh, you're in no position to threaten me. Without my antidote, you'll soon turn into a zombie. Release me, become my slave, and I can save you. Delilah remained defiant. I didn't waste any more words. I simply snapped her neck. From her reaction, I knew she would never hand over her research willingly. Keeping her alive was pointless. Delilah died with disbelief in her eyes, seemingly astonished that I had actually dared to kill her. After killing Delilah, I moved all the research from the Z biochemical lab to the Panrock prison, establishing a new biochemical lab there. This process took me a month. During that month, I used hordes of zombies to restore Panrock prison to its original state. Having consumed a crimson crystal, the side effects were completely neutralized, and I could freely consume nutritional supplements to enhance my abilities. By the end of the month, I could control up to 1,500 zombies and had increased my control range to 900 meters. Even without the virus antidote, I could live comfortably in the post-apocalyptic world. However, as a human survivor, I felt obligated to save humanity, especially since my intelligence had developed greatly, far surpassing human limits and allowing me to learn rapidly. 3 months later, I fully understood Delilah's research and began working on the antidote. I don't know when I will discover the antidote, but I believe that in the near future, I will certainly create it, eliminate the zombies, and save humanity. As for the hundreds of embryos being cultured in the Z biochemical lab, I took them all under my wing, relocating them to Panrock prison, where I began a new chapter of life.